Very good morning to you. Yes, wherever you are on the continent, happy Spring Day to you. Elvis President, it's a beautiful day. The spirits are up, isn't it?
The spirits up, and Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim viewers out there as well. I hope you enjoyed this day. It's going to be a wonderful day. It's first day of spring.
Yeah, there's a great mood in the air. Lots of chutzpah going around and good feelings.
Good feelings, of course, if you've got 14 million rand in your bank account. Now, of course, the Higher Education Minister, Elvis, says he wants how to pay. Somebody must face the music.
Somebody must pay the music. And, of course, it's 14 million rand into a student's account, which was supposed to be 1,400 rand. Ended up to 14 million rand. That's why we're asking you this question. Who do you think should take the blame for the NSFAS debacle? 14 million
What a
rand
blunder.
debacle.
I can tell you what, I think it should not be Spungile Mani. Her surname is Mani, by the way. Who should be facing the music for this?
No,
well, she shopped until she dropped, by the way, 880 times.
Yeah, no, that's not too bad. I tell you what, if it was my wife, bless her, she would have spent that money in a week. Anyhow, IG, the Mahafa Noel tells us.
University, because it's responsible for allocating the money to the students. So it's a university that Mahafa says should be responsible. And a reasonable person should have noticed that they sent 14 million rand to one student.
Now, that's also a fact there that need to be checked. Collins.
Interesting one.
Collins, he says the incompetent financial officer who processed that transaction, the recipient should also seek legal recourse for trauma. Trauma of spending 888,000 rand.
Well, you know, they say that money burns a hole in your pocket.
Oh, yes, it does.
There's no doubt.
Especially if it's not yours.
If it's not yours, and if you, if you like to, if you like nice things.
I beg to disagree. I beg to disagree. If the money's in my account, it's mine.
It's like you're talking like a weave language now.
Yes.
If I buy the hair, it's my hair. It is not your hair. Anyhow, let's focus on the issues of the day. Of course, the president was in Parliament yesterday, Elvis, and of course, the Speaker once again had her hands full.
Well, it was serious question and answers there in Parliament here. But then, of course, the EFF stormed out again after the President. They suggested the President didn't answer their questions. And that's why we're asking this question, Kendall.
We'd like to find out from you. Are you at home satisfied with the President's response to questions in Parliament yesterday?
Well, we got a lot of votes in, I'll tell you that. 288 votes in the first hour. It's something that people are really interested in. And it's a good indication of how Parliament's become quite popular in South Africa.
Yeah, exactly. 81% of the respondents saying not really. But Mahafa comes in and says, extremely disappointed. He can't say he doesn't know when asked a question. The President must know everything.
Well, the President can't know
Nobody
everything.
knows everything.
Yes.
Not even Elvis knows everything.
Well, Michael Big M says, yes, he answered all the questions that were asked. And Julius Malema is still a bit upset about being kicked out of the My ANC, being the way he talks to Jay-Z.
Yeah. Oh, well. These are the views, guys. Keep it coming. It's an interesting day. It's spring day. There's a good feeling in the air. Of course, it's warmer temperatures. Everyone's feeling a little bit happy. But, of course, the only ones that are not happy are the coaches that lost some players yesterday.
Oh, yes. The transfer window is now closed. The international transfer window, both here as well as in most of Europe. And you know what? Some coaches were looking for players who they didn't get. In fact, one of them deciding on the medical table that he's changing his mind and not moving to Chelsea anymore.
I saw that one. I thought that was a little bit much. But anyhow, it's all about the money now in football. Football is money and power. It's not even that much skill anymore. If you've got the money, you can get the silverware. They tell me that. The question is, though, is anyone worth 200 million euro? That's what? 3.5 billion rand, Elvis.
Well,
does that make you feel sick?
If you speak to Neymar, you would say yes. But if you speak to me, I don't think so.
222 million euro played for Neymar yesterday on a very long loan deal for Mbappe, 180 million euro. Yeah. Very interesting. Any player worth that?
Well, that could pay for maybe the fees must fall, education crisis, could sort that out, most of it anyhow.
Yes.
No doubt. So it just puts you in context where the world is going, when what is important. Football is life, it seems. Sponga. Recession, ish. He says to us, in this market, Zidane, Figo, Scholes would cost in excess of 400 million. This is ridiculous, and it will ruin the game in 3 seasons' time. Sponga, I agree with you, my friend. I think we are going nowhere fast. There's going to be a bubble that's going to burst at some point.
Well, this one from Michael Big M says, yes, we've seen what Neymar cost PSG inside, and a few years down the line, it's going to cost more. It is what it is. Players' worth are rising every year.
Yes, Michael, only if we are held to ransom to pay that expensive satellite costs. If we stop watching, what are they going to do?
We're not going to stop, are we?
That is true. We love our football. Anyhow, it's Friday. There's plenty to get into. It's an interesting show today. Let's get straight into our work, Elvis.
Let's get down to business. President Jacob Zuma's son, Duduzane, and as the night any claims of corruption leveled against him. The board of Eskom has to submit a report by today explaining its controversial ties with the Gupta-linked company Trillion. And the interviewing of candidates to sit on the board of the SABC continues this morning. Now, those are the stories we'll keep you updated with, and of course, we'll bring you more a little bit later. But before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendo Makhamate what's happening on the sports front.
You know, it's a Friday morning and there's so much happening on this 1st of September. A transfer window, football on the weekend, Formula One, tennis.
Pro 14 starts tonight. We're looking forward to that one.
Absolutely. I'll be having a chat with Jody Hendricks about exactly what to expect over the weekend, as well as talking to Ralph Nkomi about the transfer window.
Yeah, it's been an interesting one, the transfer window. So,
So make sure you stick around for all of that. But you know what? I do get ahead of myself. This is what we've got planned for you in the sports today.
Probably the toughest game compared to the Nigeria game, because they're underdogs, you know, they've got nothing to lose.
Bafana are under no illusions as to the challenge they'll be facing when they take to the field against Cape Verde in the World Cup qualifier tonight. And the football transfer window is now shut, and young Frenchman Kylian Mbappe makes a move to PSG to join Neymar in Paris under a complicated €180 million loan deal. As Roger Federer battles through to the third round of the US Open, overcoming Michal Yuzny in 5 hard-fought sets.
Roger Federer is through in 5 sets to the third round.
All this and more later on at about 10:40. Of course, I will be chatting with Eben about all the big stories of the day at Sports Focus around about 9:45, 9:50 or so. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. President Jacob Zuma's son and businessman, Duduzane Zuma, has denied any claims of corruption leveled against him. Now, he was speaking in an exclusive interview with the BBC News Focus on Africa. Duduzane is a business partner of the Gupta family, who is at the center of corruption allegations involving government contracts.
There was a problem with the finance minister as well, Pravin Gordhan, and you have subsequently written an open letter to him. So in that open letter to the former finance minister, Dramatic wrote, and I quote, "How do you sleep at night?" Well, some are wondering whether in fact you should be responding to that question. Can you?
Of how I sleep at night. I sleep very well. Do I have moments of being sad about the situation, being irritated about it, being disappointed by it? Definitely. Upset? Definitely not. There's 7,500 employees we've been fighting for. That is definitely on my mind. That is definitely on my partner's minds. That's definitely on the employees' minds. Now, one cannot be relaxed in that situation. Do I get rest? I have to get rest. I'm a human being. But these things do affect my train of thought, and that's something I wake up to every day. What's going to happen? What's the next move? You know, it's not an easy position, but it's a position that we stepped up to, and we'll fulfill what we need to fulfill, whichever way the situation goes. Because at the end of the day, people need to understand that this is not about me. It's not about the former Minister Gordhan. It's not about the Guptas. This is about the plight of the people of the country. This is a scenario that's unfolding. It's been unfolding for many years. It's just come to boiling point now, I think.
Staying in the family dynasty, President Jacob Zuma has strongly defended controversial SAA chairperson Dudu Myeni. Myeni is accused of failing corporate governance at SAA. However, the president told Parliament that the rot at SAA was there long before Mnyeni was appointed the chairperson.
The president was asked to explain his delay in signing the proclamation to mandate the SIU to investigate the SABC and about the general crisis which embroils most of the parastatals, including SAA. But he suggested that it was in fact Mnyeni who alerted everyone about the rot.
In fact, the people we are referring to now, the fact that the portfolio committee for the first time got a report of corruption in SAA is because of the people we are talking about who made that possible. All others who have been there before, we did not get that report. And that report indicates that the corruption has been going on for a long time.
But his opportunity to answer questions was, as usual, dominated by heckling and attacks on his integrity. He was accused of refusing to answer direct questions about his family's involvement in state capture and his appointment of incompetent people to high positions in government and in state-owned enterprises.
When you ask a question, you expect an answer. The question is quite simple. It says someone is lying to South Africa about
We've
the president.
heard the question.
I'm asking if the president is going to take.
We have
Mr.
heard the
Simon
question,
to
and the
court.
president says he has answered
not.
you.
We cannot allow the president to treat parliament with disdain like he's doing. It's completely unacceptable. This is the attitude that you see in most members of the executive who refuse to answer questions here or absent themselves when we deliver member statements in this house. They are taking cue from the president.
Are defending a criminal of note against honorable member.
Honorable
You
Malema,
are defending a criminal.
you are also speaking, disobeying the request
against honorable members
when you
who
are
doing their
recognized.
job.
Why are you always associated with incompetent or corrupt characters? When are you going to fire Minister Faith Mutambi?
Presiding officer said to come to the president's rescue as opposition parties continued to level a barrage of criticisms at the president.
What I see now is the abuse of the privilege of freedom of speech, and that is unacceptable. I warn members, I'm not taking any further points of order on this matter, because this procedure,
on a point of order,
Honorable Member, I'm still addressing, you may not do that.
Heckling and insults continued until members of the EFF were ordered to leave the National Assembly. The president will be back again in November to answer his final round of questions for the current year. Manilisi Tubase, SABC News, Parliament.
Speakers definitely had their hands full, and that's why we're asking you this question this morning on our poll. If we can put it up there so we can see the numbers. Are you satisfied with the president's response to the questions in Parliament yesterday? There you have it, 347 votes in. There's 23 hours left to vote on this one. And you can see there, 81% of you here in South Africa and the rest of the continent in Africa are suggesting that the president didn't really answer the questions. Only 19% are saying yes, that they're very happy with how the president responded. Now, the board of Eskom has to submit a report by today explaining its controversial ties with the Gupta-linked company Trillion. Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown extended the deadline after initially giving the board until yesterday to submit that report. The board reportedly lied about payments to Trillion amounting to 1.6 billion rand. Minister Brown says she will seek an urgent opinion on the report from the lawyers. She expects to have the report by the end of business tomorrow. According to a media release sent by her department, she will then communicate developments to South Africans. Interviews into candidates vying for the positions on the SABC board will enter the third and final day today. So far, 22 candidates have been interviewed and a further 13 are set to be interviewed.
A wide range of skills are needed to turn around the SABC, and candidates have been grilled in order to bring out their expertise. Previous experiences, good or bad, also feature in the questions. One candidate, an acting COO at NSFAS, was quizzed about the 14 million rand erroneously transferred to a student.
So what is most likely to happen, the university will find themselves in a negative on the money that was paid to that student, but not NSFAS, because they must sign what we've given them.
This candidate was quizzed on her skills and experiences in production houses, as well as what her contribution would be to turn around the public broadcaster.
First thing would be to do a skills audit of all personnel in the SABC to make sure that the right people are actually in the right positions. Then you're looking at retrain, retrench, or move them into positions where they are going to be more effective.
Some of the favorites also did not have it easy. This current interim board member was grilled about a possible conflict of interest because he consulted for the ANC headquarters.
If you look at my track record on the SABC for the past 3.5 years, I've stood up against some very, very serious decisions taken by ANC ministers. That's the first point. The second point, decisions taken by ANC members of the SABC board.
Others got the committee chuckling about the role of the SABC.
The Broadcasting Act communicates with the people that this is an institution where it serves to be the mouth of the government.
So the SABC is the mouth of the government. Is that how you understand the SABC?
Did I say the government?
Pulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, you're watching the mouth of the government. But we are focusing today on medical negligence and, of course, the financial impact thereof on the health sector. Let's start that conversation. It's over to Eben.
I don't quite know how to respond to that one, Elvis, but I must say the board interviews have been enlightening. If I have
Very
to be,
enlightening, I might add, yes.
If I have to be polite. Anyhow, of course, today we're looking at medical negligence. It's something that seems to be on the increase here in South Africa, Elvis. Issues around wrong diagnosis, poor services in the healthcare sector in general.
And the impact thereof on the financial, on the health sector in general in terms of their finances, that has come to light, especially here in Gauteng, Eben.
Absolutely. Now, the Gauteng Health MEC, Gwen Ramokgopa, has visited the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital to assess the quality of care in the maternity wards there. Now, this follows a young mother being forced to give birth on her own at this hospital just a month ago. The health department has been forced to make hefty payouts in medical litigation.
Political parties raised concerns after news that a 22-year-old mother had lost her baby due to alleged negligence by staff at Bara. Records show that from 2014 up until 2016, there have been 1,338 child deaths at birth. Head of neonatal unit at the hospital denies there's a culture of negligence there.
That's a very unfair statement. The people that work in this hospital are here for a reason. And everyone that works here is dedicated to saving lives, saving mothers. And our greatest joy is when we go to our follow-up clinic and we see a mother comes back and she says, thank you.
These new mothers say they were worried to give birth at the hospital due to the negative reports in the public domain.
A bit worried.
And when you got here?
Yeah, no, but I was comforted because everything went well.
It's not that bad, just that maybe they're short-staffed most of the time. Okay. So there's too much workload for them.
They're good. I like how they take care of my baby. I don't have a problem. They're kind. Anything I ask them, they're not rude, nothing.
Staff has, however, again raised the issue of insufficient personnel and old or aging equipment.
We want a special fund for medical litigation so that we can focus the budget for the department in looking after patients. Secondly, I will be announcing the names of the Patient Safety and Medical Litigation Advisory Panel. For now, it will be co-chaired, the interim one will be co-chaired by Professor Veriava, as well as the retired Judge Klassen.
It's hoped that the Safety and Litigation Panel will work towards dealing with patient reports of negligence or misconduct by staff in the public hospitals.
That they are abandoning the public sector.
Nozintombi Mia, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the MEC, that's Gwen Ramakgopa herself, she indicated until early evening last night that she was going to join us today to talk about, well, the issues around medical negligence, this specific story, but also some of the other concerning factors that we've been dealing with. Of course, who can forget Sidimeni, the disaster that happened here in Gauteng Health not so long ago. But we'll continue talking about medical negligence with a whole range of experts. But the Health MEC, Gwen Ramakgopa, is a late withdrawal from the show. That's all I would like you to know. Let's now move on to the trends. Of course, who can forget yesterday's parliamentary session? Yes, hashtag Zuma Q&A, as Parliament offered some political entertainment, we are told, as the President answered MPs' questions about a variety of issues, including SAA and many others. You want to catch up on what happened yesterday? Well, the hashtags to follow are the following: Mbete, Ndlozi, Maimani, and Duduzane. These are all doing the rounds this morning. Then, the University of Cape Town is the continent's highest placed institution in 171st position globally, although it's fallen now by 23 places compared with last year. Hashtag UCT. And in case you missed it, this week was filled with some interesting news from around the world. Flooding has affected most parts of the US state of Texas, with more than $23 billion worth in damages. 44 people have lost their lives. Of course, it's because of the Hurricane Harvey, and some of the pictures are just incredible coming out of southern Texas, as you can see. Meanwhile, Spain, well, they had their annual tomato festival, La Tomatina, where they marked the start of the spring harvest with a tomato fight. Now, just look at these pictures from Instagram. Would you want to join in? I'm not so sure. Hunger is a real problem around the world. I don't think I could morally stand around and toss tons and tons of tomatoes at my friends, but who knows? Then, moving to the United Kingdom, it's been 20 years since the death of Princess Diana, still Lady Di to most of you. Now, new investigations taking place around the suspicious circumstances of the car accident that ended her life. Of course, that was in Paris 20 years ago yesterday. Hashtag Princess Diana, or Lady Di for the older generation. Then, back to the US, in the state of Colorado, a dinosaur fossil believed to be, no, it's not me, 66 million years old. It's been discovered. The hashtag, the Colorado dinosaur. It'll be interesting to see once they piece it together. And of course, it's Friday, it's spring day. Send us a picture if you're feeling happy, if you've got that spring day feeling, and if you can just leave us with a little quote to start your day. This is one around: stop watering the weeds in your life and start watering the flowers. Yep, get rid of all those weeds in your life. They just make the journey a little bit tougher. Anyhow, our picture of the day now. This one comes from Colin, and it's captioned: Born Freeze will not believe that Parliament used to be this dignified. There you see a lovely picture of Madiba pointing former President Thabo Mbeki to his seat in the National Assembly. Wonderful memories, of course. Yesterday was once again a little bit rowdy, those of you that watched it. Now, our comment of the day, it comes from Mimi, and well, who says, when the Northern Hemisphere says goodbye to warm summer days, we say goodbye to cold winter nights. Yes, spring is here, spring has sprung. Hello, spring. We all feel that good feeling. On top of it, it's Friday. It's payday this week. Life is good in these times. Let's take a look at what's happening in the courts. In Nelspruit, where the two women arrested for killing Bongekile Mokoena are applying for bail there. She was abducted and killed by her boyfriend's ex-girlfriend. Now, we will hear details of how they killed her and then threw the body in a nearby dam. The community there's absolutely been shocked by these developments, so we'll follow that case and put it up throughout our later shows today. Now, Looking forward to Monday, we'll be looking at the need for Muslim marriages to be legally recognized in South Africa. This after the Women's Legal Centre put forward an application to the Western Cape High Court to create a legal framework that will protect Muslim women in the event of divorce. It's been an ongoing saga. We feel we have to deal with it at some point. Monday, if you want to watch it. We're going to take a little break, but we're talking medical negligence today. Elvis is standing by after a short break.
What guides us? Is it something you can see?
We need deliverance from sin, because God never
Hear?
carry on working to spread the message
Feel?
to the whole world.
Or touch? What leads us onto greater experiences? Is it the words of our sacred texts? The advice of our elders? Or is it the actions of our people? The strength of our beliefs? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
We continue our discussion this morning. The Gauteng Health Department's failure to pay 6.2 million rand to a victim of medical negligence has resulted in office furniture being attached by the sheriff of the court. The province's health budget grew from 37.6 billion rand in 2016 to 40.2 billion in 2017. But currently, the department has a 13 billion rand claim against it due to medical negligence. Now, this has caused serious budget constraints as the department does not budget for medical negligence or cost on its own. In December 2009, a minor suffered a brain injury. This resulted in permanent severe damage and manifested in cerebral palsy as a result of no monitoring, management, postnatal care and treatment by doctors and staff at Polo Song Hospital. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Jack Bloom, who is the DA Shadow MEC on Health in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning. Nice to be with you.
First and foremost, I would like to talk to you about medical negligence claims and payments and how it affects or hinder the Gauteng Department of Health.
Well, it's becoming a major chunk of the Gauteng Health Department's budget every year. Every year, the amount actually paid up goes up and up. This year, I think it's probably going to be more than 1 billion rand, but there's a potential liability of more than 13 billion rand. You know, these are claims that are made. Doesn't mean they'll all be upheld in court, but nevertheless, it's a big chunk out of the department's budget. The department's budget, as we've heard, is 40 billion rand. So if you're taking 1 billion rand out of it, that's a huge amount of money. The problem is that this money should go for improving the quality of care, because obviously we don't want babies being born brain damaged. This should never happen at all. So the problem is, once you take that out of the general health budget, because it comes straight out of the hospital budget, then the hospital doesn't have enough staff and resources, and you know, problems happen.
Which hospitals, especially here in Gauteng, are affected by medical negligence, and why?
Well, the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital accounts for about half of the total claims. In fact, in the last 2 years, they've paid out for medical negligence claims for 44 cases of brain-damaged children, more than R500 million. I mean, that's an enormous amount. So I actually visited the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital to see what the problem was, and I don't think you can blame the staff. They're doing what they can under the circumstances, but there's definite problem there in terms of shortage of staff, equipment not working, and just the sheer number of baby deliveries that they do. They do more than 20,000 deliveries a year. So if you had proper equipment and resources, you shouldn't have problems, but we do have problems because I don't think enough attention is being paid to that department at that hospital. And of course, we have medical negligence claims at other hospitals as well.
Is the budget sufficient, though, for the health department?
Well, you know, it's considerably larger than it was some years ago, but the problem is that the population has grown as well, and as the MEC has pointed out, anything between 15 and 30% of patients at a particular hospital could be foreign nationals. So we don't get properly allocated from the National Treasury to account for the increase in population and for the number of foreign nationals that use our hospitals. So I agree with the MEC that we need to go to the National Treasury and ask for an increased allocation based on the sheer numbers that are being treated by our hospitals.
What is the Department of Gauteng doing wrong, and what are some of the solutions open to the department in order to curb or to solve the financial crisis that they are in?
Well, the department's been plagued with mismanagement for many, many years, and I think they've got to start with putting the best people in the jobs. You know, hospitals should be efficiently run, and if there's vacancies, they must fill them. If there's equipment that's broken, they must fix that equipment. I think start with the basics. But the problem is that we have this huge claim against the department, and I'm not sure how they're going to deal with it. I suspect there'll have to be some kind of financial bailout at some stage. But if there is such a bailout, I think it's got to come with very strict conditions because, you know, I still think there's a lot of corruption and inefficiency in that department. It is actually a large budget. It's larger than the budget for Cape Town City. But is it used properly? And I have severe questions about that.
Are you in favour of a proposal by the MEC to pay the claimants in instalments, and will that perhaps resolve the issue?
Well, I take their point. They're saying that if it's and the payment could be 30 million rand for lifetime costs of a brain-damaged child, and the child could die the next year for a particular reason. So I think that's sort of the logic of it. But I think as the law stands, actually, it says you have to pay in one installment. It is currently before the Constitutional Court. They will make a ruling on it. But I suspect that the law may actually have to be changed. But you can imagine that it does immensely hit the department's budget if they have to make them all up front.
Is there any particular department person that should be held responsible for this mess? And how do we fix malpractice, especially here in Gauteng?
Well, you know, there's no excuse for poor quality care, and I think that we need to tackle it from a variety of perspectives. But, you know, we shouldn't always blame the doctors and the nurses. You know, when you see what conditions they're working under, you can see how, you know, mistakes can happen. Having said that, I think hospital management has something to answer for. I mean, they need to have proper procedures in place, and they need to investigate why these are happening. Why are particular hospitals higher than others? Why is Chris Hani Baragwanath, for instance, much higher than any other hospital? It's partly because of the huge number of babies they deliver, but really I think we need to have proper management of resources and you know, do what we can with what we have.
Mr. Bloom, you have also accused the Gauteng Health Department of abandoning psychiatric patients. Tell us more about that and why.
Well, this is very painful because, as you know, there was the Sedimeni disaster earlier this year and more than 100 psychiatric patients died. And I asked a series of questions to the Gauteng Health Department, got a very comprehensive reply, which was actually quite horrifying. You know, we are supposed to have 28 per 100,000 population beds, 28 beds per 100,000 according to our population. It turns out we're short of about 2,700 psychiatric beds. Now that's one part of the problem. The other part of the problem is very often when they go to a hospital, they're not put in a dedicated psychiatric ward, they're put in a normal ward, and that's when problems happen. And the other horrifying part of the reply I got was that at hospitals like Weskoppies and Tara, you know, who once had very high reputations, the quality of the facilities there care is deteriorating. And, you know, I'm very concerned about that because I think that if, you know, psychiatric patients are very vulnerable, they should have good conditions in which to recover, and the state of the facilities were not good at all.
The Isidameni patients, has that been resolved, the entire issue around those patients that were still outstanding?
Well, I hope so. The bulk of them are actually with two private hospital groups. The one is the Selby Park Hospital, and the other is back to Isidameni, their Waverley facility in Germiston, and the rest are in state institutions. I think we need to monitor what's happening there. It's something that should never have happened in the first place, but as I've said, in general, facilities for psychiatric patients are very inadequate. We simply don't have enough beds.
In your view, what will happen now? Because the sheriff has attached the furniture of the department.
Well, you know, I just have to say that it's incredible the department disobeys the law. You know, if you have a court order that says you must pay, you must pay. And especially if you're a government department where, you know, you should obey the law, as we should all. And, you know, the sheriff for the court went there more than a week ago, and they haven't paid anything. Now, you know, what's going to happen? First of all, this furniture can get auctioned off, won't get much money out of it, but nevertheless they'll have to replace it with quite expensive new furniture. And the other thing is that the head office in Johannesburg, I don't know how these head office staff operate. They don't have computers, they don't have chairs, they don't have tables. How can it go on like this? I mean, it just paints a very bad picture. The department doesn't pay its debts and doesn't look after its staff.
Mr. Bloomer, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio. That was the DA Shadow MEC on health in the Gauteng Provincial Legislature. What do you make of that story? Isn't that disturbing? But right now, local and international policy experts, economic consultants, scholars, lawyers and academics have gathered for the 11th Annual Competition Law, Economics and Policy Conference hosted by the Competition Commission in partnership with the Competition Tribunal. The theme for this year's conference is the future of competition policy. Now, earlier, the Deputy President, Cyril Ramaphosa, addressed the conference. In fact, he is speaking as we speak. Let's cross there live.
And it was interesting to read an OECD report which was commenting on our competition environment. And the OECD said we've set up lofty ideals in terms of having a competition policy that will be transformational, that will change the structure of our economy. And this, the OECD observed, was a product of the past. Product of the past in that the past system that we had, apartheid, so structured our economy that it only favored a particular racial group to be the owners, the controllers of the economy, and it did so by law, by convention, by practice, and by everything else. It is actually an anomalous type of situation, which I guess many people would say they have never seen in many parts of the world, where you make laws and say only one racial group shall have the right to participate in this area, and you shall not trade in a particular part of the country. You will only be restricted to either the township or rural area and so forth. So it was this that the OECD also commented on and looked at the body of the act and said the two don't talk to each other. And it is also what I observed. And having observed this, I then looked at precedents around the world, Commissioner. Precedents around the world that I looked at was to go to the citadel of capitalism. And I went to the United States and I looked at what the United States did many years ago, at the turn of the century, when one of their presidents, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, broke up a number of monopolies. And he did that because he concluded that the dominance of certain monopolies in sectors of the economy were not good for the American economy. And the one example that comes to mind, maybe there are two, was in the oil industry. America had discovered oil. They were pumping oil from their ground. And many oil fields were littered across the country, and a few companies had emerged as the dominant players. And Roosevelt realized that oil was the key, and indeed it was the key driver of economic growth. And it was propelling the American economy forward, but he also concluded that it was not moving as quickly as it should because there was dominance of this oil industry. He then concluded that what needed to be done, and these oil activities were owned by trust companies. They had organized themselves as trusts, and this trust held this piece of land and so forth, and there were few. And that is when he came up with the antitrust laws. And the antitrust laws were aimed at breaking up these trust companies, and Standard Oil was one of those that was very dominant. Broke them up, there were about 4 or 8 or so. They were broken up, and 40 companies then emerged as key players in the oil industry, and America took off. The growth was breathtaking. And that in itself defined America as, if you like, as a blue-blooded capitalist country where competition was the rule of the day. But it was competition that enabled other players to come in, compete, and in the end, it was to the benefit of even those few companies who operated, because it sharpened their wits, it made them more competitive, and that breakup was not to rule them out of playing in the market. It was to open up space, and they continued operating, as it did when they broke up their telecoms company, which was AT&T. They broke it up into Southwest Bell and so forth, and the telecoms company, industry rather, before then was concentrated, and it was broken up, and many telcos then came up and existed, and then their telephonic industry then took off. Now, having looked at the American experience, I concluded that it is something that we should learn from, because market concentration is not good for an economy. An economy that seeks to grow and to thrive and to embrace new technologies, efficiencies, and in the end also consumer satisfaction in the form of prices coming down, is an economy that can work much more better and efficiently. And having looked at the OECD report and looked at the American experience, and indeed Europe also caught up onto that. Now, this is something that a competition policy in South Africa needs to look at, to embrace what we have set out in the preamble of our Competition Act, and to mesh that into the body of the Act, and make the Act alive, and make the Act transformational, and to respond to the needs of South Africa, because our needs possibly are much greater than the needs that Franklin Delano Roosevelt looked at. He was looking at economic growth, and so are we. We are looking at economic growth, but we are also looking at the inclusion of all our people in economic participation. And the purpose of the Act should therefore be to provide all South Africans equal opportunity to participate fairly in the national economy of our country, to also promote employment and advance the social and economic welfare of all South Africans. A question will then be asked, once, as it was asked in the US, once the oil industry or sector was broken up, will those that emerge be able to thrive? They did thrive and succeed, because when you do deconcentrate the economy of your country, there is already a market. Where there was one player, you then create a number of players. There is already economic activity, and the banks should not have any difficulty in underwriting or funding the new players that can emerge, because a market exists. And in fact, funding institutions should find this most exciting, because that is when they will see competition at its best, where the best succeeds and where they can put their money behind the very best. Because concentration often leads to sluggishness, it also often leads to complacency, and breaking up concentration is not nationalization, even without compensation. It is actually giving value for money for what a concentrated business will have had, and it can then use that firepower to further invest in their own business once they have been given a slice of the business, and they can then break out into a number of other areas. In short, the purpose of the Act should really be to facilitate economic transformation. And economic transformation, yes, you can guess that is radical, that is transformational, but that is also inclusive. But more than anything else, it would be sustainable, because the new entrants will be able to go to the banks, and the banks would be able to understand the business, because they would have been funding the concentrator, and they would say, we know this business and we can therefore fund it, and in this area, this sector that you have chosen, we can fund it effectively because we understand it. So it is sustainable. Now, as we work together to fundamentally change our economy, and let me say, economic policy is the one instrument, and there are others, that we can utilize to fundamentally change the structure of our economy. We've often complained that the structure of the South African economy is the root of the problem. And indeed it is, because the way our economy was structured, we came from the minerals extraction complex and manufacturing, agriculture, and all we've been doing is to export raw minerals without even beneficiating them. And that defined the structure of our economy, and that led to the concentration of the economy in the hands of white men, largely. And the case of Anglo-American, which you quoted, Judge Manoin, is a case in point. And we are therefore bound to ask whether, in substance and practice, our policies and laws and institutions, including the Competition Commission, the Tribunal, and what have you, and what you also heard, Judge Dennis Davis, are institutions that will meet the objectives that we have in mind. We inherited, as we all must accept, a racially skewed economy that had all these players. It is this that we need to correct. 23 years after our democracy, the moment has arrived for us to introspectively look at transforming this. And we do this on the back of what is happening throughout the world. The world is now calling for inclusivity of effort, of initiative, of anything that we do at an economic level. And not only economically, but socially as well. I attended the World Economic Forum in Davos this year. The president couldn't go, so I went there. And the theme of the conference was inclusive growth. And so the world, right across the globe, is talking about inclusion. And people around the world are saying, include us. I read, was it in the Financial Times just yesterday, the New York Times it was, troubles that are unfolding in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, in a particular area where a Canadian company has been mining for some years, and the local community is rising up, and they say, you have been mining gold in this area, far-flung area in the DRC. And they say, as they are protesting, we want to be included. We want you, as a Canadian company, to make us part of what you are doing here, as you eke out our rock and transport it to various parts of the world. We want to be part of this economic drama that is unfolding. And they are up in arms, and they've actually stopped the extraction of gold in that area. The poor Canadian company is dizzy. They are all 6s and 9s. But in the end, what they have to do is to sit down with the community and talk about inclusion. So 23 years later, in our own country, it is inclusion of those who were deliberately prevented from participating in the economy of their country that is now at the top of people's minds. And it is this that the competition policy in our country needs to address. And it needs to address it not only when it encounters mergers and acquisitions, when a company buys company X and comes. It needs to be proactive. It needs to look at market dominance. It needs to ask itself, is this market dominance the correct one? I was telling colleagues before coming into this meeting that I used to be a chairperson of a major company in our country. And one of the things that you do as a chairperson, you go around the various subsidiaries, and I went to one. And this one is a company that processes pig intestines. And I learned then that every pig has up to 14 kilometers of intestines in its belly. And this pig intestines is used as casing for sausages. And they import billions and billions of kilometers of pigs' intestines from China, because they eat a lot of pigs there. So they bring that in. And it is the only company in the whole country, let alone maybe even sub-Saharan Africa, that does this. No other company does this. Do they have market dominance? Are they a monopoly? And I would say, yes, they are. And what it also does is that it will prevent many other companies from coming in through hogging the space, through the distribution outlets and everything else. And it is this that the Competition Commission or competition policy that it must look at. Market dominance in the South African context, therefore, refers not only to specific sectors in which segment share has been unfairly captured and retained by a few companies. Now, a phenomenon unfolded in our country after 1994, when black people suddenly were allowed to become key players in the economy. And as they came in, they became black entrepreneurs, something that they were prevented from doing in the past. And because the market had been carved up by a minority, they found that there was very little space to play. And therefore, they bought shares into existing companies. Because as they looked at property, they were dominant players in property. As they looked at whatever, they were dominant. In mining, they were dominant players. So they became appendages because there wasn't very little left. So in the end, they found the space closed up. And what the competition policy should do is to open up the space so that new companies can be created. Black people who were prevented from becoming economic players can become players in the economy of a country. This refers to concentration of ownership and control, and this has largely been in the hands of a few. So black South Africans are, for the most part, excluded from exercising control, even as they have bought into these companies. They became what I call appendages. They became silent players or minority players. So the system that they found as a given did not allow them to play the role that others have been playing, of being controllers and of being owners. We must therefore measure the effectiveness of our competition policy by the extent to which it contributes to the undoing of the racial and gender dimensions of economic concentration. Now, Minister Patel said yesterday, our competition policies should concern themselves not only with the conduct of companies, but also, yes, the structure of the market, but also the structure of our economy. Where the structure of markets are found to inhibit competition, inhibit also innovation, because by definition, when you are a dominant player, in the end, you are also inhibiting innovation, because there are many clever people around and they will find it difficult to all be employed by your company. They are all over. So for as long as you're the only dominant player, other people who would have been innovators, clever, creative, will not find space, and the economy therefore suffers. We need therefore to have appropriate policy instruments that can change the structure. And in recent years, South Africa's competition authorities, working together with industry and other public entities, have produced several innovative measures to promote public interest, considerations in significant mergers and acquisition. And let it never be heard me saying that the role of the competition authorities has not been effective. In fact, they have been world-class. They've been world-class. Commissioner, as you have looked at competition processes in our country, where you have made interventions, you have often made interventions that advance the interests of South Africans. So you've been at the cutting edge, and you've been as great as many other key competition authorities have been in the world. This has been possible because the authorities have seen their role not merely as regulatory, but also as being developmental, to help to develop our country into a better place. It is this same thinking that must inform our approach as we evolve our policies and laws as well as practices. We must use the levers at our disposal to facilitate the entry of new black companies into established markets, because there is space, and competition policy must make that space open. Just as Franklin Delano Roosevelt did in the United States, when he looked at the lethargy, the slow growth that the United States was confronted with. And when he opened up the sectors, they exploded with growth. And similarly, the same can happen here. We must create space, yes, for black-owned companies, for small, medium enterprises to flourish. Unless we open up that space, all the resources we invest in our economy will be of no little value. Significantly, our competition policies must expand choice and reduce costs for consumers in the end. And correctly so, the Competition Commission must focus, as the current Act does focus, on the interests of consumers in our economy. And as we implement policies to change the structure of our economy, we must at all times be aware of the devastating impact that anti-competitive behavior has on the lives of ordinary people. We must ensure that our competition law and institutions effectively protect the poor. They must safeguard the dignity and the rights of our people. Now, the latest poverty trends report that was released last week by Stats SA, we now know that more than half of our people live in poverty. We know that children aged 17 and younger are the ones who are disproportionately affected by all this. These statistics are, in the end, for any person who is in leadership, any person who is socially aware and politically astute, they are devastating. But they are not nearly as devastating as the lives behind those statistics. And indulge me in telling the story of one such life, and that is the life of Sivuyile Sibozo. And in 2015, the social news website, which is called Ground Up, carried an article about Sibozo and his brothers. In part, it read, when you are 14 years old, your parents, as we all know, normally take care of you. You are totally dependent on your parents. But Sivuyile Sibozo from Site C in an informal settlement called Taiwan in Khayelitsha has been taking care of his brother and his grandmother, and he has been doing that for the past 3 years, and he's just 14. But then he grew up. As he was 17 years old, he lost his mother, and he lost his mother in 2004, and he had his 15-year-old brother, and both of them were taken care of by his grandmother. But last month, Noah Tuse, his grandmother, died. And that left Sivuyile alone to run the household. Ground Up, this NGO, visited the boys in their shack. The shack is very old, with holes. Those of you who might have had the occasion to go to informal settlements and looked at how a good number of our people live will know how shacks are, with holes, wind blowing in, plastic sheets and all that. And this young man said, sometimes I only manage to make 10 rand a day just to put bread on the table. He dropped out of school in 2012 in grade 7 and took a job in a construction company in Cape Town. It was not an easy decision, he says, but it had to be taken. I could not sit and watch my family's hunger. Sometimes I regret the decision that I took to leave school, but at that time, it was the only solution that I had, he says. I could not watch my family suffer like that. All the food my grandmother used to buy would not last a month. She was not working and dependent on my brother's foster grant. The money was not enough. We were always in debt, and that is why I decided to find a job. Now, Sivuyile's brother, who asked not to be named, says at times they sit at home and they hope that one of the neighbors will come and knock on the door and give them food. He says sometimes he dodges school because of hunger. And there's a neighbor, Unotolo, who sometimes gives the boys food. And this Unotolo sister told Ground Up she met the family while Nootuse was still alive. This is a very sad situation, she says. I always know that the food I am giving them won't last for long. Tragically, the plight of the Sibozo brothers is not unusual. It is prevalent throughout the country. the situation like that of millions of South Africans is in the end very desperate rather. But it is made even more desperate by the actions of companies that collude to keep the price of bread artificially high, and you bravely and gallantly dealt with that, Commissioner. When cartels fix the price of a necessity like bread, poor families are sometimes forced to choose between paying for school transport or starving. And we live in a country where the cost of living is just so exponentially high. The cost of food is much higher in South Africa than it is in many other places. And we also know that the cost of things like data is extremely high as well, whereas in other countries it is low. And this has to be addressed. And this must be addressed so that South Africans can live a better life in terms of this cost structure of enabling life to happen. In the private healthcare system, prices are also fixed, and we were very pleased when the courts intervened, and in the end we now have ARVs on which 3.5 million of our people rely on to sustain their lives were brought down. As we deliberate at this conference on the critical issue of competition policy and law, we must remain alert to the indignity of poverty that affects many South Africans, and particularly young people as well. We must refuse to be numbed by it. It is inhumane and it is also unnatural. Our actions can ease or compound the suffering of the people of our country. Competition policy, in the end, must contribute to the achievement of sustainable but affordable livelihoods. But as social partners, it is our responsibility, all of us, to confront attitudes and end practices that place the activities of business at odds with the interests of society. And this is where inclusivity comes in. And this is where prospering your neighbor should be something that we embrace. And in African languages, it is what we call Ubuntu. You are because I am as well. And this is what must underpin what we do. Even as corporations, even as we operate our profit margins, we need to look at that and see, are our profit margins so excessively high because of our dominance? By resisting competition and charging more for products and services, businesses add to the hardships of ordinary people. And this militates against inclusivity, this militates against sustainability, and it also militates against what I would call a smart partnership. We need to be crafting a really wonderful and smart partnership between business and the ordinary people in our country. Business plays such a critical role because they are the economic drivers that enable our economy to grow. But at the same time, as they drive this economy, they must also take the interests of ordinary people into heart. And in doing so, business should make sure that they are not complicit in perpetuating poverty as well as deepening inequality. As social partners, we share a determination and commitment to develop our economy, to eradicate poverty, and fundamentally to transform our society. And in the end, Master of Ceremonies, we look to you, the delegates at this conference, to give guidance on this, to address this matter. We have a country that has people who want to live sustainable lives, and their livelihoods need to be underpinned by growth. But as the economy grows, it must be inclusive growth, and that inclusivity can be enabled by deconcentrating our economy and making sure that there are new entrants in our economic activity. Competition policy, therefore, is a great instrument to undo the wrongs of the past and to make our country a better place. Thank you very much.
Deputy President, thank you very much for that incredibly inspiring and thoughtful address that you've given us. And I think you've reminded us in the agencies that when we're dealing with our cases...
Well, we cut away from that event now, that conference on competition law. And, of course, what happens? Yes, we see rampant inequality in South Africa. When you pay double the price you should for a loaf of bread, 133 cases of collusion, price fixing before the Competition Commission right now. That's what the Deputy President was talking about. It is a challenge that South Africa needs to overcome if we are going to grow and if we are going to create a society where there's a place for all of that. We are going to look at the issues that the Deputy President discussed right there within the next week or so and try and find a way forward. It's certainly very difficult unbundling the monopolistic character of South Africa's economy. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we will look once again at our theme for today, medical negligence. Don't miss it.
If you ask this Irish master whiskey distiller why sometimes whiskey is spelled with an E and sometimes without, he'd say,
"Oh, to be sure. You feel so good, look. It's the whole thing. They're back and get off in the whiskey without the E."
Yeah, didn't catch that. But if you asked us the difference, we'd tell you that every whiskey from around the world is spelled without the E, except for Irish and American whiskies. Cheers. Tops at Spa. Good whiskey, good advice, no Irish accents.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom on SABC News. Now, I got it wrong there before we went to a break. We are not going to talk about medical negligence. We're actually going to talk about, well, the end of what's been a very long and at times very violent Women's Month. The Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation is calling on South African women to speak up against violence against them as part of a new social media campaign to highlight the pervasive nature of the scourge. The campaign reads, #EndVAW now. Of course, violence against women now. And it will be conducted across all social media platforms to allow women to share their own stories. Now, to talk to us a little bit about this, we are joined by Nonhlanhla Sibanda Moyo, a gender specialist from the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Norma is good enough, isn't it?
It's Norma, actually, not Nonhlanhla.
Oh.
Norma Masiko.
Thank you, my dear. There, they just sold me a dummy, my crew. Thank you very much for joining us, though, my dear. Apologies about getting the name wrong. I'm going to have to throttle somebody a little bit later. But anyhow, we're talking about gender-based violence, and we've had a whole series of incidents in Women's Month. Some of them high profile, some of them involving cabinet ministers, some of them involving even foreign dignitaries, as we've seen. The President yesterday, in his question and answer session in Parliament, he alluded to the fact that he believes that we have made inroads in the fight, positive inroads in the fight against gender-based violence in South Africa. What do you think about that?
Yeah, but I think it's important for us to recognize that certainly efforts have been made by a government. I think it would be unfair and untrue for us to say that no effort has been made. But I think when we...
You see, compared to children who grow up without a father figure, not a parent, a father figure, and those that grow up with a father figure, their lives very often look very different. It's something that we have to address, but how do we get our men back in the home?
That's a very difficult question, Eben, and I think what for us stands out is the fact that violence against women is a learned behavior, right? So you're not born as a young boy or a child with a propensity to perpetrate such crimes, but it is a socially learned behavior. And we would argue that if it is a socially learned behavior, it can certainly be unlearned. And that's why we need positive role modeling. That's why, for example, when we see high-profile members of our cabinet perpetuating such crimes, it's problematic for us because these are the men that young boys look to, right? So we need positive role modeling, and most importantly, Eben, we need the social cost to be higher for perpetrators of such violence. Because often than not, there's no social cost. What happens is that such men who perpetuate such crimes are not arrested, number one, and some of them are not even fired from their jobs. In fact, some of them get promoted. So certainly that's problematic.
Is it then more important for men in leadership positions to be conscious about their responsibility?
Absolutely,
That's the
absolutely,
case.
it's important.
What about in the home with regards to women? Sometimes it's almost normal, or women are socialized to keep quiet about the abuse, and it goes across all race groups that women keep quiet about the abuse. With this kind of a campaign, how do you think it will change that secrecy element?
Certainly it's important for women to speak out. I cannot stress how important it is for us as women to speak out against crimes. And for us, if you're hearing your neighbor is being beaten up by a husband, not to turn up the volume on your television and close your blinds, but it's important that we act in our localities. But a more important question that I've been battling with is, what are the cost benefits of speaking out? So as a woman, I've been raped. What benefits are there for me to speak out? Is the criminal justice system on my side? Is society on my side? As a married woman, for example, if I decide to leave my husband because he beats me up, what are the social costs as a woman within society if I speak out and if I leave? And that for us, we're not convinced that women have a space where they can actually speak out and be heard and be believed, and to know that when I say such a crime has been committed against me, I am believed. So it's huge challenges that we're facing,
I wish you all the best with the campaign. I hope it works, and I hope more and more women take the responsibility to stand up and speak up. Thank you.
It's not the responsibility of just women, it's a responsibility of all of us as a society.
Oh, yes, no doubt. All of us as a society. This thing cannot be tolerated anymore, and it cannot be normalized. There's no doubt about that. Thank you very much, Norma, for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
For coming in today. Of course, the hashtag is End Violence Against Women Now. Go and interact with it and see what contribution you can make, because we all need to contribute, even if your contribution is just in your own house. We're going to take a short commercial break. You're watching The Newsroom Show.
Africa is constantly getting new technologies, and with that comes new terms.
Massive, open, online university. And primarily what they are doing is they're established in the community, so they're well established within the Soweto community.
Internet of Things also covers small sensors, so you can do like home security, motion detectors, IP cameras.
Our network, which simplifies these terms for you. We also have new gadgets and social media.
When it falls on the grounds and then the battery, everything falls off, people just put it all together and then your phone is back in shape.
The Vlega app, we initially started off by doing this manually.
The internet is actually my favorite fashion invention of all time.
That's Network with Ms. Pumelele Zondi every Sunday at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. Yes, Women's Month is just coming to an end. Now, women working in male-dominated industries have very limited opportunities, no doubt, to rise within their ranks owing to factors that we all know. These are gender discrimination, sexual harassment, a lack of provision for their physical and even structural needs by employers here in South Africa. Now, South Africa's Sam Tambani Research Institute conducted a study on the challenges facing women in mining, construction and the energy sectors that shows women in these sectors continue to experience high levels of abuse and discrimination in the workplace. Now, to talk to us about this a little bit, well, we are joined by Nkalai Senior, who's a research specialist at the Sam Tambani Research Institute. Very good morning to you, Nkalai. Thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
I'm very happy that I have your name right, because I got it horribly wrong a short while ago, and I'm still feeling a little bit flustered because of it. But thank you for joining us. This is such an interesting bit of research that's being done, and so necessary right now in South Africa, because these sectors are known to be traditionally male. Just give us a quick overview of what you found.
Yes, you're very right. These three sectors are male-dominated sectors. But what has happened in the past years is that the government has tried to include and invite more women into the sectors. So the government intentionally set a 10% target to say women must be included in mining. Yeah. But in our research, we found that as much as visibility of women in this sectors is there is still a lot of marginalization in terms of their specific needs of being a woman being taken into consideration, particularly because these are male-dominated sectors. So for an instance, the problems are cultural and structural. Yeah. So you have power relations issues going there. So
you talk about cultural specific. It's the first time I've heard somebody mention the C word with regards to discrimination in the workplace.
Yes.
Just talk to me about these kind of cultural dynamics that are playing out.
So the work in the mining requires heavy lifting, and culturally men are seen to be the ones that are able to carry out work of that nature. So you find that even better paying jobs are given to men as opposed to women. Yeah. And that puts women in abusive environments. Yeah. In a way, because of how we see certain work and we segregate positions, divides workers and particularly puts women in those low-paying jobs. So that is one of the challenges that we found, that a lot of women that are in the sectors have jobs that are very abusive and that are not allowing them to grow into or progress into better one. But
you touched on sexual harassment and other forms of gender discrimination. Is that still rife in these sectors?
Yes. So sexual harassment, it's still there in a sense that it can take different forms. Women are either sexually harassed, and there are those women who perform sexual favors to get better positions, to get men to do this heavy work that I talked about earlier, yet they hold those positions themselves. So we found out sometimes women would report when they go underground, and then the carrier gets there, they find that there's been, because it's very dark, and there are lots of men and few women, you find when they get there, there's been semen around you and you don't know how that happened. You find that your clothes have been pulled down. So, and when they report these things, there is no form of action that takes place. So a lot of them do not report these incidences.
So underground, these kinds of things are perpetrated against women? Yes.
And another thing is that they complain about the uniform. It's designed for women, so they have the overalls that are sort of a jumpsuit. So when you're underground and you have to go and relieve yourself, literally a woman has to take everything off. And those exposes them
to danger,
to this,
if you can call that. Wow, these problems certainly, certainly are very concerning and quite big issues that women are facing. Talk to us about the mining charter and how it is either catering or not catering for women, and how this can be improved.
Look, like I said, the mining charter set a target because initially women were never allowed to even work in the mining. So the mining charter set the target, the 10%, to have women represented in mining, and also particularly in positions, higher level positions. But the problem is, even though the legislative or policies are there, there is no enforcement, there's no action plans with specific tasks to say how we're going to follow up on that. So that is where the problem is. But the mining charter on its own has been very successful in terms of getting women in the workplace. But now we have to talk about integration, so that women are not just there in numbers, but the specific needs of being. Women don't want to be men. Women are not men. Women have different strengths that men have.
Absolutely.
So we need to take into consideration the specific needs and qualities that women have and that they can bring in these sectors.
And it should be implemented. We've run out of time. I wish I could talk to you a little bit longer about some of the other issues, but it's something we'll definitely follow up with you going forward, because some of the things you talk about are just too concerning. Dark corners underground where women are at risk. Tell you what.
Thank you.
Nkalai, thank you very much for coming in today and talking to us about some of the research that's coming out from women working in sectors like mining and construction, as well as parts of the energy sector, where it's certainly still very, very difficult to be a woman and to be taken seriously as somebody who can do the job. Now, transfer deadline day was yesterday, and there's a lot to be said and a lot to be talked about. Now, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, Ken will pick up the baton and get straight into his work.
Thank you so much, Evan. Very hearty good morning to you all. We are about to get into that transfer deadline story that Evan was telling us about just now. In fact, the very first thing that we want to come back to on right now is tell you about how the deadline closed yesterday. And among the notable moves, it included the PSL, the Player of the Year, Lebogang Manyama, moving to Turkey. Now, Manyama, who was snapped up by a Turkish club, Konyaspor, the deal is subject to a medical. Mamelodi Sundowns have boosted their team with a swap deal, gaining defender Rivaldo Kutsia from Ajax, whose deal with Celtic fell through. Midfielder Sfiso Mie and he swapped Johannesburg for Pretoria as he signed for SuperSport United from champions Wits on loan. Now, soccer's summer transfer window closed in the wee hours of this morning with Rivaldo Coetzee, as I've just said, moving from Ajax Cape Town to Mamelodi Sundowns and Mario Boysen crossing over from Sundowns to Ajax. Lebogang Manyama, the talismanic captain of Cape Town City, will be plying his trade in Turkey, of course, subject to that ominous medical. The big stories, though, have come from Europe with Brazilian forward Neymar as the most expensive transfer of the season and in history. The Barcelona forward moved to Paris Saint-Germain for a record €222 million. The second most expensive deal came in the form of a loan, with Paris Saint-Germain signing Kylian Mbappe from Monaco for €180 million. Ralph Nkomo, player agent, joins us to look at some of these massive signings. Good morning to you, Ralph, and thanks for coming through.
Good morning. For me, it's a good time because being part French, I've been based in France half my life, so for me to see Paris, which is my team anyway, you know, doing this kind of deals, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Look, I think, you know, the raw emotion that you're expressing right now is pretty much what I would imagine most of Paris is feeling, because now all of a sudden Paris Saint-Germain is definitely not just promising and showing the potential. Paris Saint-Germain has actually got the firepower. It's got Cavani, it's got Dani Alves, and now Neymar and Mbappe.
I'm going to touch on a few things. First, Neymar was €222 million. The day before, the WHO were appealing for $200 million to eradicate polio. That is scary. And Paris put that kind of money without even a second thought. Because when Barcelona put that buyout clause, they didn't know Paris would be bold enough to do that. And secondly, for Mbappe, because of financial fair play, they've spent another £166 million for him, but they only just have to pay it in September because they're playing with. Don't be surprised when the Qatari government, one of the departments, Qatar Airways or any of the departments, all of a sudden sponsors PSG for $400 million for the next 4 years.
Just like that.
Because then they're covered. So financial fair play doesn't work with the team like Man City or Paris Saint-Germain because they're state-owned. They don't have a budget.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
What relationship does Qatar have with PSG?
The owner.
So
the Qatari government, one of the royal sons owns PSG.
So we're looking at a situation, for example, when Barcelona's Neymar, former Barcelona's Neymar, moving from Barcelona to PSG, is literally taking a hand out of, like, money out of one pocket, putting it into the other pocket and saying, whoop, the player can move. State
acquisition. Because look at what has happened. We won't go into politics. Saudi, everybody, the blacklist Qatar. Qatar next day, boom. They've got a team that represents them. It's their face in Paris, Europe's main capital. Okay? And the team buys Neymar. The whole world knows Neymar will be Ballon d'Or in a few years. Now, they got Mbappe, the most exciting African 18-year-old, because it's Cameroonian, let's face it, the most exciting young player in the world. I mean, Mbappe is probably the most exciting player since Ronaldo, the original. Because remember, at 18, that's what Ronaldo was beginning to promise. So it's fantastic for football because now there's a power shift. Remember, Barcelona just used to click the fingers and the player goes there.
That's right.
Now this thing has hit them. Like, they're in shock. That's why you see they panic. They're panicking. They're going to every team that's got a decent player and offering silly money.
It is silly money, isn't it? I mean, it's fairly obscene. You just mentioned now the WHO just now were asking for $200 million to eradicate polio.
Yes.
And then the very next day, within days after that, PSG just splashes out the money on a football player.
Yeah, one person.
Wow. Talking about Barcelona and their, some of their desperation, they've gone for Ousmane Dembele.
Yeah.
Dembele would not buy the. It's not really a desperate buy, is he? He's got talent.
He's top talent.
He's top class. He's going to fit in very nicely, unlike what some people say Paulinho does in that team.
But is he going to sell jerseys like Neymar? Remember, football these days it's so commercialized now.
Yes.
It's about how much they can recoup from the €150 million that they're supposed to pay Dortmund. See, they need to sell jerseys. They need a player with branding. And Usman, not yet. He's young. He's a top talent in the future. He's top. Maybe he'll even be better than Neymar in the long run. But
For
right
now,
now,
he's not. Yeah.
They won't make their money back.
So now, is this sustainable over the next 2, 3, 4, maybe 5 seasons? Is it sustainable for player transfer fees and their wages to be so high?
No. It's all going to stop, because what's going to happen is next year, teams will try and go around the world looking for big sponsorships, so they can also, and you see people will stop putting buyout clauses, because that's what killed Barcelona. That's why Liverpool is in a stronger position with Coutinho. They won't let him go because they don't have a buyout clause. You just say, I'm not selling.
Either we're going to sell, we're not going to sell.
Yeah.
It's not about can you trigger the buyout clause with how much money you've got.
Yeah, it's not about money. You see, and touching on Liverpool and the Premiership, what Oxlade-Chamberlain did sort of brought a bit of faith back into football, because he refused big money to stay at Arsenal, refused even bigger money, almost double what he's getting in Liverpool at Chelsea, to stay at Liverpool for sporting reasons. Because people are now forgetting there has to be a sporting project balanced with a financial project.
Yes.
It can't just be about money, you know, and then you're losing the working class, who are the biggest fans of football.
No, that's true. Talking about working class and fans of football, a lot of people are really disappointed to see that Rivaldo Coetzee dream move to Celtic just was scuppered by a medical. Rivaldo Coetzee on the verge of playing UEFA Champions League football, and all of a sudden a medical comes out and he can't move. He's now moving to Mamelodi Sundowns, which is a very good move for a South African player, but I'm sure Celtic versus Sundowns, he is a little disappointed. How could it happen that a medical get in the way of such a big move?
The boy will be gutted. The boy will be gutted. I'll tell you, in Europe, when they do a medical, they check your heart, they check everything, because for them it's an investment, not for 1 year or not for 2 years, but for long term. And because the boy is about, what, 20?
He's 20,
it's a long-term investment. So I think the boy should have had a stringent medical here, because the facilities are here, you know. Then after that, you inform the team that, listen, the boy's got a slight injury, like what Chelsea did with Bakayoko, like what City did. You know, if you inform them, look, I got a slight injury, but by October I'll be playing. But it looks like they should have really put Celtic on a back foot and literally force them into the deal. Because what they've done, wow, it's okay. I mean, he'll be playing in 2 or 3 months. I don't know.
So the door's not shut from going to Europe if that is what he still wants to do next season.
It's far too much good quality.
Right.
What he should do, he should target to play to go. Because the danger of the boys is he might get too comfortable. Because let's face it, when you play for Chiefs, Pirates, or Sundowns, it's easy here. It's easy. You drive nice cars. The life is very good. So it's easy. If he keeps targeting going out there, then maybe, you know,
stay hungry.
He has to be hungry.
Like Leucha Manyama is about to move to Turkish club Konyaspor, and he would definitely have to go through that same medical, and hopefully everything has been made apparent and clear to his new club, that, you know, if he's got any niggles that they actually know up front, because that could get in the way like it did with Rivaldo.
What we used to do is we would fax his medical history before he gets there.
Right.
I mean, I remember I had a player who was signing for a very big team, I can't say, you know, in England. And the coach forced us to do for him to train with the team before we signed. And I remember the player saying to me, hey, Bra Ralph, what if I injure myself? I said, play. So he twisted his knee. And now when they're doing the medical, they kept on referring to the knee. And I said, no, you guys injured him. We talked about it, but, you know, ended up signing. But guess what? We had to go
a little lower.
The salary. We had to drop £20,000 a week.
Crazy.
I know.
Ralph.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really key information that you're giving us. It's very valuable, especially during this time. And we sure hope that a lot more players and agents, as well as staff, medical staff, look a little more closely at what they do before they send a player over for medicals by foreign powers, if I could put it that way.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
There you have it, Ralph Nkomo, player agent Deluxe, talking to us about some of the things that we've all been talking about on social media, as well as with our friends back home and right here in the office. Now we'll move on to other sporting stories, where we now talk Formula One, where Silver Arrows ace Lewis Hamilton has cut Sebastian Vettel's championship lead to just 7 points with his narrow win at Spa. And Ferrari want to use this, their home race of Monza, to leverage a widening of the gap again. They're very confident ahead of the race, and they know they need a strong result at Monza this weekend. Now, the good news for the Tifosi is that most in the paddock believe that they have the car to achieve what will be the Italian team's very first victory since 2010. Sebastian Vettel, of course, might have had to play second fiddle to Lewis Hamilton during a very gripping and intense fight in Belgium last Sunday, but the very fact that Ferrari were able to push Mercedes all the way has filled the Scuderia with confidence. The FIA is tightening rules on oil consumption from this weekend, following allegations from different quarters this year that some engine manufacturers are burning oil technology to boost combustion and their power outputs. The new limit is going to be 0.9 litres per 100 kilometres, whereas teams were limited to 1.2 litres prior to the Italian Grand Prix. Currently, we are in free practice 1 at Monza. Let's see who's going to come out top. Bottas, as you could see, is currently leading the times there, but we'll see how it goes. It's going to be a very exciting weekend. Now, we carry on to other sporting news, where Uganda have kept their dream of qualifying for the maiden FIFA World Cup alive. The Ugandans are now top of Group E with 7 points after beating the mighty Egyptians 1-0 in Kampala in the 2018 FIFA World Cup qualifying match. Egypt are now lying second in the group with 6 points. The Cranes made history earlier this year when they played in the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations tournament after an absence of almost 40 years. Uganda's Tanzania-based forward Emmanuel Okwi scored the only goal of the game 6 minutes after half-time. Now, just so you know what's happening else, what else is happening this weekend, the Pro 14 is kicking off this weekend, bumped up from a 12-team Northern Hemisphere-only tournament to being a 14-team competition. It also includes 2 South African teams in the Free States Cheetahs and the Eastern Provinces Southern Kings. It promises to change the face of international club rugby. The tournament follows in the cross-hemisphere footsteps of Super Rugby, which has a Japanese rugby team playing Southern Hemisphere teams, but that's really where the similarities end. With me to break it down more for us and preview this weekend's action is Jody Hendricks, sports analyst. Good morning and thanks very much for coming through.
Morning, Kendall.
Jody, it's a massive weekend by all accounts, and the Cheetahs and Kings have been given a lifeline, haven't they?
A new chapter in South African rugby, and like you said, world rugby. I think to have 6 South African teams competing in 2 different top international tournaments, I think is really a step forward for South African rugby. It's been spoken about for some time now, Kendall, and finally it's been given the go-ahead. I think there's going to be some teething problems in the first year, overlapping with the Currie Cup, the Cheetahs and the Kings having played Super Rugby, Currie Cup, and now going straight into the Pro 14. So I think in terms of the player quality, that will be tested because it's going to be a long season. They started in March or in February this year, and the season will only end for them, for the Cheetahs and Kings, now in June next year. But exciting times ahead.
You actually mentioned some key points there. One of them would be like how South Africa has actually found itself now in this plumb position of almost being kingmakers of franchise rugby, because there they are, 2 international competitions, 2 top international competitions, and we've got South African teams in there. And the other thing that you mentioned was the Currie Cup.
Yeah, I think it's going to filter down to the South African. This could probably strengthen South African rugby, and when I talk about South African rugby, I'm talking about our local competition, the Currie Cup. An ideal structure that I would like to see, Kendall, is have 8 teams in the Currie Cup competing. The top 4, whoever they are, they go and play Super Rugby. Teams 5 and 6 go and play Pro 14 rugby, and have teams 7 and 8 supplement the other teams. I think that will strengthen our South African rugby. I think it's an ideal opportunity to do that, because if you look at the figures and numbers of people watching on TV and attending games, I mean 5,000 people last week when the Cheetahs played the Lions at home, you know, and this is supposed to be our top rugby competition. I think it's sad, and I think with our teams playing in Super Rugby and in Pro 14, it could down the line strengthen our Currie Cup.
Very interesting that you put it that way. I don't know how happy Pro 14 would be to have the two bottom teams from the top 5 or 6 from South Africa playing in their competition. I'm sure they'd also want to have a bite at like the top South African team as well, because surely one would actually look at how the Lions have been performing, especially when they went down to New Zealand, and how good the rugby has become from the Northern Hemisphere, because they had a bit of a lull, didn't they?
Yeah, I think also a lot of money in Northern Hemisphere rugby, but they were willing to accommodate the Kings and Cheetahs, who by any stroke of the imagination, Kendall, is not South Africa's best teams. They are not the Lions, they are not the Sharks or the Stormers, if you consider them as the best South African teams. So I think if we have teams 5 and 6 participating, and look, if the Cheetahs, for example, have a great Currie Cup like they did last year and win the tournament, they get to play Super Rugby. That means a team like the Bulls, for example, with their rich history in the Super Rugby, will then go play Pro 14, which could also benefit them, because in terms of logistics, flights are 10 hours away. For example, if you fly from Bloemfontein to Johannesburg, Johannesburg to Sydney, Sydney to Auckland, Auckland to Canberra.
That's intense. Yeah,
to Christchurch, it's 36 hours. Now you have a 10-hour flight. You get to spend 2 weeks in Europe, come back, the players are fresh, it's not as demanding as Super Rugby, and it could, and like I said, the bottom line is we want what's best for South African rugby, and I think having our teams participating in 2 top tournaments we are on the right track. But to filter that down and make sure that our local game benefits, that's where the challenge is going to come
Absolutely, and it's also the same time zone and all that.
Yeah.
Now, just talking about Northern and Southern Hemisphere, when they're in the winter, we're in our summer, how do you think that will affect the recovery of the players, considering their winter is intense and our summers are intense as well?
And one of the challenges with this new tournament, and I hope it's only for the first year, is playing rugby in South Africa over December and January.
Yeah, the hottest months.
Yeah, in Bloemfontein and Port Elizabeth, which they're known for the heat in that period. And I think the Northern Hemisphere teams are going to have to adapt. That's a challenge.
So, I mean, let's talk about that. Okay. They'll be in the middle of their winter. We'll be in the middle of our summer. How is that going to affect the player recovery, going back and forth between that? Like maybe every 2 weeks you're moving from a totally different environment.
And that's my point I made in the beginning about the teething problems. These are all things, I don't think it's going to be easy for the Cheetahs, the Kings, or it won't be easy for the European sides as well. They are trying this out. They are going to see where it goes. A 3-year deal's been signed. I think the first year there's going to be a lot of lessons learned in terms of structuring the tournament, in terms of player well-being. So I think there's going to be challenges. I think the Northern Hemisphere teams are going to have to adapt, just like South African players are going to have to adapt to those conditions when they go over there.
Do you think this is the beginning of the end for SANZAR?
Definitely. I think it's the beginning of the end. I don't think the end is in sight yet, but I think in a couple of years we might be looking at this completely in a different way if we see the emergence of what's happening, for example, in the USA and all that they have at their disposal. I think that might be another route South Africa is looking at. And depending on how well our teams do in the Pro 14, I think the South African teams in the future might be looking at that, because pounds, it will be financially more lucrative for them. I think if I chat to the guys in Port Elizabeth and in Bloemfontein, they're not complaining financially, because they'll be coining it in pounds now for the next 3 years.
I'd beg to actually put a little thing in there, a little theory about how the United States, New Zealand and Australia might actually split off and do their own thing, because they're that much closer to each other in terms of travel time and so on and so forth, just the Pacific between them. And then, the Eastern Hemisphere, the Western Hemisphere, if I could put it, South Africa are doing things with the European teams.
I don't think it's going to happen in the next 3 years. I think it might happen in the next 5 to 10 years. And also with that Australia, New Zealand, American conference, don't forget Japan.
Yeah.
They're going to be a big player in the rugby circles in a couple of years. So they might be involved there. And, we want South African rugby. I think we're a bit spoiled in South African rugby. I think we want our teams to do well. And it's clear for all to see that we're struggling against teams like New Zealand and not Australia at the moment, but Australia also very unpredictable. But I think in future, depending on how well this first 3 years in the Pro 14 go for the Cheetahs and the Kings, that might be the step in the right direction, or in that direction of moving away from SANZAR.
Jody, before I let you go, let's have a quick look at what we can expect over the weekend in terms of the fixtures. It's really exciting to see these teams lined up against the Cheetahs, lined up against the Kings. As you can see, very interesting. It's going to be tonight. Those times are British Standard Times, which means it's going to be about an hour later here in South Africa that Ulster Rugby will be playing the Toyota Cheetahs at Kingspan. And then, of course, the next day, Scarlet Southern Kings at 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. What can we expect from these matches? Are it going to be slow, grinding affairs or fast-running rugby as the Kings and Cheetahs have shown?
Yeah, the Cheetahs and both the Kings, they like to run the ball, but I think the fields in the Northern Hemisphere is a bit heavier, so they're going to have to adapt. I think Ulster, 6 South Africans in that Ulster starting 15, Kendall, so a couple of the guys might know each other. Surprisingly, the Cheetahs chose their strongest team for this game, and they put quite a weak team for this weekend's top-of-the-table clash in the Currie Cup, so I'm a bit surprised by that. And then, obviously, the Southern Kings, a baptism of fire for them against the defending champions away from home for them, so I think that's also going to be a tough game for them. But, you know, we've seen what Dion Davids managed to do in the Super Rugby. A lot of new players joined the Kings. A lot of the old players left for other unions and to go overseas. So I think it's going to be a tough game for them. I think the Cheetahs, if they adapt to the conditions, they might be able to surprise us. They have a very good team. I think it's going to be tough for the Southern Kings against Scarlets tomorrow.
Jody, you said something really key, and I think we should chat about it. I do believe that this might actually mark the end of Currie Cup rugby. Like you said, the Cheetahs themselves have chosen a top team to go play in Pro 14 and a slightly weaker team to play in the Currie Cup. But I know it's a debate to be had, and I'd love to have that with you sometime. Yeah,
just lastly, Kendall, I think if it's managed correctly, it could be a benefit to our South African rugby, and by that I mean the Currie Cup, if the structure is done correctly.
Isn't that the perennial thing, managing it correctly? You're right, Jody. I really appreciate your time, really appreciate your incredibly valuable input.
Thank you very much.
Jody Hendricks, one of the top all-time newsroom sports analysts, talking to us about what we can expect in the Pro 14 of the weekend. We'll take a short break. We'll be back shortly. You are watching Newsroom.
Today on Rights and Recourse, we will unpack the new traditional court model.
The idea of the bill is not to overregulate, to basically set the principles.
The most important aspect of this bill is that it understands that customary law, by its nature, is consensual. That I have a right to affiliate, I have a right, therefore, to opt in, and I have a right to opt out.
The opt-out provision is basically one that you've got to respect the court in the sense of, if you've been summoned, you've got to tell the clerk of the court at least that you're not willing to attend.
The challenge that I would like to throw to the Department of Justice, it has to come up with mechanisms of ensuring that people who exercise their right to opt out or to opt in are not in any way victimized.
Hashtag Rights with Dumila Matez on legal issues every Sunday at 2 o'clock Central African time.
Through he goes, he's still going, he pops it up, he says Peterson. Easy as that, what a response it is from the Cheetahs, brilliant score.
Imran Tahir produced a superb performance with the ball. The Proteas leg spinner put his side in the driving seat, scalping 3 wickets for just 18 runs.
Gifton Gope is flying toward third, and he is there with a triple, his first in the big leagues.
It is a Ferrari front row lockout, unless Hamilton can get on pole, and he can't. Ferrari, for the first time since France in 2008, have locked out the front row.
For all your sports news, keep it locked to Sports Live every Saturday and Sunday from 20:30.
I think winter is definitely one of those seasons where you can really show off your sartorial choices. You can start from a single layer of a shirt, actually starting with thermals, build it up with the shirts. You can have beautiful knits over the shirts, like we've done with Jay.
This film tells the story of a very, very significant political figure in the struggle for freedom in South Africa, who happened to be a woman. She was Nelson Mandela's wife.
The exhibition is an exploration into black femininity. Tabitha is a woman of colour, and she is exploring the historical exploitation of the black female body.
Newtown Junction Mall hosted an epic contest in the cold where 3 top South African graffiti artists battled it out for the opportunity to become the Newtown Graffiti Face-Off Master.
For your weekly dose of entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1. We are certain in giving an update on all leading stories.
You see South Africa has a yellow palette which indicates a warning color on this index.
We are first to give market updates.
And the more the currency is under pressure, also our costs go up.
We always give you the best guests to keep you informed and sharpen you for the day ahead.
You got to find something people are willing to pay for, that they need now, and they have the money to pay for it. The minute you tick those 3 boxes, you're in business.
Sports Roundup to fill you in.
985 is not the end. For me, it's going faster than the 985 and keep improving the record.
Never start your day without Morning Live if you need a perfect dress guide for the day.
Parts of KZN into Kokstad, we're seeing those 4 patches. Please drive carefully.
Set the agenda for the day with Morning Live.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
It's the final hour here in the newsroom, Jumbo Africa, and a warm welcome. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Kendall Makhamat.
And we'll be with you until 12 o'clock. Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim viewers out there, all over the continent in Africa. Now today our focus is on Higher Education Minister Bladen Nzimande. He wants the Intelimani, they are the managers of that fund, to face the music for a blunder that resulted in the NSFAS student getting 14 million rand student.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting story. It's been running the entire week. And you know what? We thought, let's bring it to you. We're about to go into the weekend. Let's bring it to you and find out from you, what do you think about this? About who should be taking the blame for this NSFAS 14 million rand blunder?
Maybe a follow-up question would be, what would you do, seeing that you have 1,000 rand in your account, all of a sudden you have 14 million rand in your account? What would you do with that? But let's take a look at what you are telling us.
Jacobs Kosana says the university should take the blame. How can they not notice that millions are missing? Something doesn't add up. I smell corruption here. You and a lot of people do, Jacob.
Ngutalo says, those who center, how can you tap 6 zeros instead of 2? What type of stress was he or she under, Yep. That's the question there from some of you. So keep them coming, we'll read them as we continue. But we're also conducting on a poll. Yesterday, the president was again in Parliament answering questions, and that's why we're asking this question.
Absolutely. Balekambete had her hands full when Jacob Zuma, our president, had to answer questions in Parliament, and quite a lot transpired. And we want to find out from you, are you satisfied with the president's responses and questions in the Q&A that was had in Parliament yesterday?
Of course, the EFF indicating that they cannot call the president because he's Dudazani's his father. But let me take a look at what you are telling us. 83% are saying no, we are not happy about the president responding to the questions from the 552 votes in as yet.
I think it's key that you mentioned that 552 people have voted on this thing so far, and 83% are saying nope, not happy. Let's see what reasons you're giving for your vote.
Onuke says, let Zuma be Zuma until he vacates the office.
Bulelani says, yes, if you're soft in Parliament, you'll become abused by the EFF.
These are your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue, but also focusing on players getting millions of pounds and euros every year. And it seems like those numbers are getting out of hand, Kendall.
Yes, we just had a chat with Ralph Nkomo right now, who's a player agent, one of the few based in South Africa who actually operates across the continent all the way into Europe. And he said, you know what, it's not sustainable. It doesn't see it lasting another 4 or 5 years. There's going to be a time when things are going to level out. No more, well, some of the conditions will be changed. But we want to find out from you, do you think any single player is worth 200 million euro? 222 million for Neymar, 180 for Mbappe. What do you think?
Pulelani says yes. Well, that's a parliament question. Come on, guys. Let's get the comments on the players up there today.
I'm sure lots of people want to talk about
what you are telling us in relation to the sports question. Remember, it's sports question. It's not.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are talking about exactly this. I mean, Onuke, he's talking about this as well. He says only the best players. No name. Ooh, he wants to start a Ronaldo-Messi debate again.
Ayatollah El Sultan says that's craziness. Well, keep them coming. We'll read them. But right now, it's time to take a look at your news headlines. President Jacob Zuma's son and businessman, Duduzane Zuma, has denied any claims of corruption leveled against him. And of course, you've seen that the board of Eskom, they are looking into stories there. They are saying that they have 24 hours. Well, they had 48 hours before. Now they only have 24 hours to answer the minister on the issues at Eskom with the Gupta link trillion. Plus, we'll also take a look at the interviewing candidates that is sitting currently in Parliament. Oh, they want to sit on the SABC board. It continues this morning. We'll keep you abreast of those stories as well. But right now, before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Elvis, quite a lot happening in the sports front. Good morning to you at home. This is what we've got planned for you in the sports bulletin today.
Probably the toughest game compared to the Nigeria game because they're underdogs. You know, they've got nothing to lose.
And Bafana are under no illusions as to the challenge they will be facing when they take to the field against Cabo Verde in the World Cup qualifier tonight. As the football transfer window is now shut, with young Frenchman Kylian Mbappe making a move to PSG to join Neymar in Paris and a complicated €180 million loan deal. Roger Federer battles through to the third round of the US Open, overcoming Michal Yuzhny in 5 hard-fought sets.
Roger Federer is through in 5 sets to the third round. What a battle here at Ash.
As you can see, slight chinks in his armor showing. He had to fight very hard against the player he's played 17 times and beaten 17 times. All this and more a little later at 11:35. For now, it's back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. President Jacob Zuma's son and businessman Duduzane Zuma has denied any claims of corruption leveled against him. Now, he was speaking in an exclusive interview with BBC News, Focus on Africa. Duduzane is a business partner of the Gupta family who is at the center of corruption allegations involving government contracts.
There was a problem with the finance minister as well, Pravin Gordhan. And you have subsequently written an open letter to him. So in that open letter to the former finance minister, Dramatic wrote, and I quote, "How do you sleep at night?" Well, some are wondering whether, in fact, you should be responding to that question. Can you?
Of how I sleep at night? I sleep very well. Do I have moments of being sad about the situation, being irritated about it, being disappointed by it? Definitely. Upset? Definitely not. There's 7,500 employees we've been fighting for. That is definitely on my mind. That is definitely on my partner's minds. That's definitely on the employees' minds. Now, one cannot be relaxed in that situation. Do I get rest? I have to get rest. I'm a human being. But these things do affect my train of thought, and that's something I wake up to every day. What's going to happen? What's the next move? You know, it's not an easy position, but it's a position that we stepped up to, and we'll fulfill what we need to fulfill. whichever way this situation goes, because at the end of the day, people need to understand that this is not about me. It's not about the former Minister Gordhan. It's not about the Guptas. This is about the plight of the people of the country. This is a scenario that's unfolding. It's been unfolding for many years. It's just come to boiling point now, I think.
Meanwhile, the government has said that South Africa is ready to support the shale gas industry and for exploration of shale gas in earmarked areas. Fracking, as it is commonly known, is under the spotlight in Port Elizabeth at a two-day conference focusing on critical national reports on shale gas. The conference is spearheaded by the Academy of Science of South Africa in partnership with the Department of Science and Technology. The government believes that shale gas is an area of real economic opportunity for South Africa. For more on the story, we now cross live to our SABC reporter, Jayed Lee Paulser, who is there. A very good morning to you, Jayed Lee, and can you tell us what's the latest there?
Yes, a very good morning to you. We are coming to you live from the Boardwalk International Convention Centre here in Port Elizabeth. We are 150 delegates from the Science Department here within government, as well as the Council for Science and the Academy of Council for Sciences, as well as environmentalists, have descended into the metro to discuss fracking and shale gas exploration. Now, you would know that fracking and shale gas exploration has been in the limelight for many years, with government proposing that they will be commencing fracking within the country. Now, we do know that the minister also released a statement last year saying that they would start fracking. But now this conference is basically unpacking the meticulous research that has gone into last year and, putting heads together, coming up with ways in how they're going to tackle the energy crisis within the country. Now, for you and I who don't know what fracking is about, I'm going to break it down for you in simple layman's terms. What they're going to be doing is drilling into the Earth's surface, into geological formations, that's rock, and then they're going to be expelling a chemical substance mixed with sand, mixed with water, and that will release methane, the gas that they are trying to get from rock formations. But now I am no science expert, and I have someone with me that knows much more about it. He's an anti-fracking campaigner and a lawyer. His name is Derek Light, and he's actually taken government to court, to the Grahamstown High Court, and he filed an urgent application to have that fracking and shale gas exploration within the Karoo that has been earmarked not commence within the year. Joining me is Derek. Good morning, Derek.
Morning, Jade.
Derek, if we look at the Karoo, which has been earmarked for fracking, is South Africa ready, and are we ready for such a huge impact in our environment?
Jade, I've been involved in this process since January 2009, when I initially opposed, on behalf of a landowner, the application of Bunde gas and oil. And we did so successfully. That application was followed by a further application by Bunde, Falcon and Shell by January 2011, at which time we represented hundreds of landowners in opposing this process. Our concerns were largely environmental. We were also concerned about the lack of knowledge on the scientific process and of the geology of the Karoo, and a lack of legislation. Fortunately, government took us seriously and put a moratorium in place in April 2011 and appointed a multidisciplinary task team to investigate the benefits and possible negative impacts of fracking. That report became available in September 2012, and government accepted that report, which essentially recommended that exploration initially without fracking until it could be regulated should proceed, and despite the limits of knowledge, an SEA should not be done. Now, a strategic environmental assessment is essential in informing government in decision making, both in respect of policy and legislation. So we pushed hard for that, and then fortunately the Minister of Environmental Affairs announced that she would have such a study done, and this was commenced in 2015. Simultaneously, the Department of Science and Technology commissioned a report on the technical readiness of this country to deal with that industry. Those reports have become available, and that is why we in Port Elizabeth to understand and discuss the recommendations.
Now, sitting in on the conference, the theme, or what I've gathered is that this is the way to go for the future. We have an energy crisis, and looking into fracking, especially within the Karoo and the Eastern Cape, it's going to create job employment. What is your take on this, Derek?
Jade, the beauty of the SEA is that it investigates all those aspects. And there's a hype created initially by the oil companies about job creation. Hundreds of thousands of jobs were going to be created. The SEA study reveals that that is not so, that in fact there are going to be less than 3,000 jobs created. Now, if you weigh that up against what, the main industry in our area is agriculture, where tens of thousands of people are employed and about 1 million people are sustained by that industry with housing, health benefits and the like, which would ordinarily be a duty that on government. So there is this hype about job creation, but it's misplaced.
And that was Derek Light from the anti-fracking campaigner and lawyer here in the Eastern Cape who took the government to court. Like I said, there's 150 delegates here in Port Elizabeth discussing fracking and shale gas exploration in Port Elizabeth. And with that, it's back to you in studio.
That's our reporter there, Jayat Lee Paulser, giving us the latest in relation to fracking. News just in. Kenya Supreme Court has announced that the Electoral Board committed irregularities and illegalities during last month's presidential vote, harming the integrity of the election that handed President Uhuru Kenyatta a second 5-year term. Kenya Supreme Court orders a rerun of the presidential poll in 60 days.
Because these are already criminals who must be charged in a proper court of law. And we thank the Supreme Court, and even though we are worthy competitors,
these are live pictures coming in from Kenya right now as the opposition reacted to the ruling there that you've just heard. Of course, President Kenyatta was not elected properly, so they say there's going to probably be a rerun in this issue. A new election will be held within 60 days if that is
I want to thank the people of Kenya. Justice equals peace. Thank you very much. Okay, pray.
A very short prayer.
Very short prayer.
Father in heaven, we come back to you today. Before we came to this court, we petitioned you. And we just want to thank you for ensuring that righteousness is restored in our land. Receive thank you from Raila, from Kalonzo Wetangula, and all of us. And on behalf of Kenyans, in Jesus' name, we thank you. Amen. Baraka za Mungu kweli.
Intervention in the rerun of the election. Those are the latest from Kenya, and the Kenyan presidential elections is nullified as we speak. We'll keep you updated on that story and bring you some more with our reporter in Kenya, Sarah Kamani, during the course of the day. You don't want to miss this. You can't switch off that telly, not right now. But we're asking you a question today on our poll because we're back here at home. Are you satisfied with the President's responses in the question and answer session in Parliament yesterday? Let's put up that poll and take a look at what the poll is suggesting as we speak. And there you see it, 563 votes in, 83% are saying no. The President's responses in Parliament was not satisfactory. 17% of you are saying yes, they're happy with the questions being given by the President. Let's take a look at what you're telling us on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as you can do that on the Facebook page as well. So it seems like there's no tweets. That's strange, but we will continue. Of course, we'll come back to some of your tweets a little bit later. Now, the board of Eskom has to submit a report by today explaining its controversial ties with the Gupta-linked company Trillian. Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Brown extended the deadline after initially giving the board until yesterday to submit the report. The board reportedly lied about payments to Trillian amounting to 1.6 billion rand. Minister Brown says that she will seek an urgent opinion on the report from her lawyers. She expects to have the report by the end of business tomorrow. According to a media release sent by her department, she will then communicate developments to South Africans. That's the latest in your news. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back after that. We talk about Casual Day on the 1st of September. Stay tuned.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the words of our sacred texts? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Why is there a dispute over who is the rightful heir to the throne?
What I can say is that Masindi is a woman. She's a girl. She's a girl child. Because I think that if she was a male, there's no way that anybody was going to dispute the fact that she is the rightful heir.
Do you recognize her as your rightful heir?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that she is my daughter. She grew up there.
What is the intention?
I want my throne.
Join me in Port Zedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend, but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it the advice of our elders? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people, and your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
Why is there a dispute over who is the rightful heir to the throne?
What I can say is that Masindi is a woman. She's a girl. She's a girl child. Because I think that if she was a male, there's no way that anybody was going to dispute the fact that she is the rightful heir.
Do you recognize her as your rightful heir?
Yeah, no, I would definitely say that she is my daughter. She grew up there.
What is the intention?
I want my throne.
Join me in Port Zedu live every Monday to Thursday at 17:30.
Welcome back. I promised you we're going to talk about Casual Day. Now, it was launched in 1995 as an awareness and a fundraising project to benefit persons with disabilities. A key goal of Casual Day is to build a society that not only embraces diversity, but actively celebrates it. Now, South Africans are urged to celebrate Casual Day today on Friday, the 1st of September. You can see there's my little sticker The annual campaign is aimed at raising awareness and funds for people with disabilities, with the theme for this year's event calling on the public, that's you, to celebrate diversity with persons with disability. Now that is the theme. To talk to us about this, we're joined by the National Director of the National Council for Persons with Disability, Tarina Wenzel. A very good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for
As
having
well
us.
as an artist, a rapper and ambassador.
Yes, yes.
Okay, for Casual Day. His name is 2J. A very good morning to you. 2J Harmonics, I must get that correct, right?
Good morning to you.
Welcome to both of you. First and foremostly, Tarina, let's start off with you. Casual Day today. What is it all about?
Well, Casual Day was conceptualized at the same time when our democracy was born. So we're very proud that every year we celebrate Casual Day when South Africa celebrates another year of democracy. And as our constitution so beautifully says, we are united in our diversity. But we still do find that persons with disabilities are sometimes left a little bit out of the diversity conversation. So that's why this year we chose this beautiful theme that says celebrate diversity with persons with disabilities. So our strong message to the public, to the media, and to government and to corporate world as civil society, whom we are, is to say, if you think diversity, think inclusion and equity, which includes persons with disabilities. And then obviously it's a wonderful fundraising project which has raised millions. And we've got so many organizations that benefit from this project, more than 500 people, actually 500 smaller organizations and schools of and for persons with disabilities countrywide. And then we also have national beneficiaries, 11 of them, which are all in the field of disability, and even 2 government departments that benefits. And it's an easy, lacquer project. It's 10 Rand. Everybody can afford that, and it binds people together. It's an opportunity for team building in the workplace. And yeah, that's Casual Day.
If you say it's 10 Rand, what do you mean by it's 10 Rand? What costs 10 Rand?
The sticker costs 10 Rand. Everybody can afford the 10 Rand. This year we made the sticker like a little puzzle piece to show that we all fit together to form one big picture in this country. And yeah, people can get the sticker at a lot of places in this country, obviously online from our office, but also from various stores, which I don't think I'm allowed to mention, but also from some government departments, which is the South African Police, which is everywhere, and the taxman. Nobody likes the taxman. We love them because they participate so well. And then obviously the Department of Defense. So the sticker is really available everywhere in the country.
So if you go shopping today, you'll be able to find the sticker.
You'll find your sticker, mostly retail, yeah.
2J Harmonics. You are a rapper and an ambassador for this campaign. Tell me about your participation and how did you get involved?
My involvement is through all the work that I've been doing through the music industry and as a person with a disability, and so breaking barriers made me an ambassador. And with that, I would like to use my voice to also help others in my field that would also go further, and other persons with disabilities.
Now, as a rapper, do you feel, and as a person with disability, do you feel there's enough inclusivity in South Africa's society as such for people with disabilities?
Well, it's getting there. It's not 100% yet, but it is getting there. You know, it depends where you are in the country also.
So what do you do for the campaign? Do you rap all over the place? Or what
I rap, I do some PR, I do some social media. I even wrote a song for Casual Day also.
You wrote a song for the campaign, yes? And has that been released already?
Yes.
So have you recorded a song in relation to this only, or is there an album in the running that's coming out soon?
It's coming soon, like next year.
Now, Tarina, let me just come back to you. The theme this year is Celebrate Diversity with Persons with Disabilities. How far is this campaign stretching, and are you making sure that every South African gets the message?
We really hope that every South African gets the message. Every year we realize how many South Africans are still out there that are a little bit ignorant. But this year has been fantastic. We're so grateful to the public and to the media. It's been so awesome. The whole message about diversity is a strong, strong message which we absolutely still need in South Africa. And it's also our duty. We are here on behalf of a minority group of people in this country, and we feel that minority groups are strong. So therefore, people with disabilities as a minority group can play a huge, big role with regards to celebrating and also pushing the message of diversity. And also we're doing it in a very positive manner. We don't want people to think of disability and then feel heavy and feel that it's expensive to be inclusive, because it's not. So we're really making it a positive thing, and that's why the rapper in our midst does it for us, and his song calling Up, 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 it's like a positive up thing.
Let me hear that rap from you, Mr. 2J Harmonics. And let me put you on the spot here.
Okay, in the second verse, I play the mascot, Abel, but I make him diverse in disability. So it goes like this. My name is Abel, society disables me. Since the age of 3, they labeled me disabled. See, told what I can and can't do, not what I am and can't prove. My lifespan stands in damn views. Let me give you views from the chair. Or if I was mute or impaired, disorder was acute or is rare, you wouldn't dare see me as a person within a group or a class. Inclusive integration relies on information, from individual needs to implementation. Sexuality, religion, disability, and race. We're all divided, but segregation is replaced with love and acceptance, above all rejection, enough with selection, our hearts in protection. Look past the exterior is part of the lesson. First impression lasts, so what's your impression?
Hala, wonderful. All right, that needs a big round of applause. Now, Tarina, just in closing, how can individuals and organizations participate in this campaign to make inclusivity a reality for all?
Well, today is Casual Day, so that's basically the culmination of everything that's been happening over months. But the diversity message carries on. After today, we already start planning next year's campaign. We already have a beautiful theme. But also the work of ourselves as National Council of and for Persons with Disabilities, as well as all the other beneficiary organizations in our field. We carry on with amazing diversity and inclusion work. And we push a theme of universal design, which means that products, programs, processes must be designed for everybody, inclusive of everybody. So people can contact us. I'm actually going to be forward to give my cell number. People must not phone me, but they can text me. It's 083-255-6854, and we do promise that we'll make individual contact with people and see how people can be included. And I'm now talking about people from all walks of life, people with and without disabilities, and whoever wants to further the diversity agenda with us. And we've got awesome partners doing that already, but the more we can get, the better, because inclusion is something that's ongoing, and it's really such a strong thing which needs to be actively pushed and not just assume that it's working.
2J Harmonics, from your perspective, what is the message that you want to get out there, not only to the youth, but everybody, whether you're abled or disabled?
Just to keep smiling, man. Whether we're persons with disabilities or able-bodied, we all can smile.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. That's the greatest gift that you can give to anyone, isn't it? And it's for free.
Yes.
Awesome.
Tarina, where can people, once again, just to make sure that everybody get the message, can they get the tickets? Everywhere, any shopping center, garages or whatever?
It's not each and every shop that participates. It is specific shops. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention
All right,
them.
mention a
Can
few.
I mention them? Game, for example, big participants and distributors, everybody in the EDCON group, and Checker ShopRite. They are the big distributors, and then again the South African Police, Department of Defence, and the Taxman's Office, and then the NGOs and schools of and for persons with disabilities in each and every little town across the country, everywhere. And that also goes for the retailers. This goes out until the furthest rural area.
Fantastic. If people want more information, they can visit your website?
They can visit our website. They can just Google Casual Day. They'll find it there. Or they can send me that SMS or WhatsApp.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us here in studio.
Thanks for having us.
And all the best for Casual Day today.
And thanks
Unfortunately,
for
I'm
having
not so
Casual Day.
casual today. I should have actually just changed into a T-shirt.
The sticker does it all, don't worry.
That was the National Director of National Council for Persons with Disabilities, Tarina Wenzel, as well as 2J Harmonics. He's a rapper, and of course, he's an ambassador for Casual Day in studio with us. And I hope that you do support them. Go online, find them there. Go to any shop and buy yourself this little sticker. You see it? See the sticker? $10. And you can make a difference. Well, interviews into candidates vying for the position on SABC's board will enter the third and final day today. So far, 22 candidates have been interviewed and a further 13 are set to be interviewed.
A wide range of skills are needed to turn around the SABC, and candidates have been grilled in order to bring out their expertise. Previous experiences, good or bad, also feature in the questions. One candidate, an acting COO at NSFAS, was quizzed about the 14 million rand erroneously transferred to a student.
So what is most likely to happen, the university will find themselves in a negative on the money that was paid to that student, but not NSFAS, because they must sign what we've given them.
This candidate was quizzed on her skills and experiences in production houses, as well as what her contribution would be to turn around the public broadcaster.
First thing would be to do a skills audit of all personnel in the SABC to make sure that the right people are actually in the right positions. Then you're looking at retrain, retrench, or move them into positions where they are going to be more effective.
Some of the favorites also did not have it easy. This current interim board member was grilled about a possible conflict of interest because he consulted for the ANC headquarters.
If you look at my track record on the SABC for the past 3.5 years, I've stood up against some very, very serious decisions taken by ANC ministers. That's the first point. The second point, decisions taken by ANC members of the SABC board.
Others got the committee chuckling about the role of the SABC.
The Broadcasting Act communicates with the people that this is an institution where it serves to be the mouth of the government.
So the SABC is the mouth of the government. Is that how you understand the SABC?
Did I say the government?
Pulelani Philip, SABC News, Parliament.
Well, you have it, the mouth of the parliament. We are public broadcaster, people. Just to remind you, we belong to you. Yes, you and you. If you're South African, if you are an African, we belong to you. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after that.
What guides us? What leads us forward? Is it leaders on a soapbox, spouting rhetoric for the crowd? Is it the actions of our people? Or the voices of our citizens? Your country is guided by the voices of its people. And your broadcaster is dependent on your voice to guide it. Get your copy of the SABC's editorial policy and have your say.
A top 5 rated horse racing event in the world, fashion is a highlight for those in attendance. All decked out in blue and white, the Lomorians Queen Plate is the premier event that kicked off everyone's social calendar.
That it was all part of my master plan to cast John Legend, but deprive him of his normal instrument and give that one to Ryan.
The House of Truth is not just a name. It is a religion. It is a lifestyle. It is a conviction that drives us.
What really excites me is how people have kept it very simple and also played with the theme, and how each person has interpreted it in their own way.
To stay updated with all the current entertainment news, tune into Trends every Saturday from 12 to 1.
It's the 1st of September, it's spring, it marks a fresh start. And of course, my granny used to say, spring clean your house on spring day. Now we here on Newsroom also have something new for you, something to spring on you. We're starting a Friday film slot. So, if you want to know what movies will be worth your time, here is our very own film guru.
Good morning, I'm Leon van Heerop, and welcome to our brand new flick slot here on Newsroom. I'm going to review the latest movies every week. There'll be nothing highbrow about these reviews. It will simply serve as a guide from which you may decide whether this is your kind of movie or not. Now, the coolest movie you can see this weekend, which will send your temperature rising past boiling point, is the Charlize Theron starrer Atomic Blonde. Well, I can assure every hot-blooded male, this girl doesn't only kick butt, she has an IQ higher than any high heel. The Berlin Wall is tumbling in 1989, and Charlize is a kick-ass agent. She has to investigate a colleague's death. She also exposes a double agent, but be warned, there's more eye candy than in a sweet shop, thankfully with less kilojoules. Charlize did most of her own stunts and actually got hurt. The plot is typically spy-related with double crossings and huge fights, but Charlize carries the film to success. And those legs. Atomic Blonde will melt your resistance and put a tiger in your tank. This week's top action movie. And as if Charlize Theron is not enough, Tom Cruise has lent his charm to American Made. The problem is, he's playing the part of a weird and immoral character, not the kind of guy he usually plays. He's a double agent who smuggled weapons and drugs for both the CIA and Pablo Escobar. Unfortunately, Tom Cruise gets in the way of the real-life Barry Seal. It is impossible to look past Cruise, the movie star with a toothy grin, and see the pilot who was abused by both sides. Tom's movie-style face damages the film and shows real-life events, but it's not really commercial, but often long-winded and repetitious. Don't let the poster fool you, but Mr. Cruise and Ms. Theron have set such high action standards that I'm afraid first kill comes almost as an afterthought. This is our next movie. You know the feeling. You are bored out of your skull on a Saturday afternoon. Atomic Blonde and American Made are sold out. So what to do? Choose third best and buy an extra large popcorn. That's how your bum will land on a first kill seat. What a disappointment. As you watch the trailer, remember, it is only the best moments that are singled out. The problem is sitting through the rest of the film between these highlights. Now, First Kill is actually the kind of film you wait to watch on DVD. It is average action fare, not worth spending too much money on. A Wall Street broker, blandly played by Hayden Christensen, makes collaborate efforts with bank robbers to get his son back. The problem is that he can't carry a film, as the Star Wars franchise proved. There's a blandness about him that makes Hayden Christensen appear frail when compared to Bruce Willis, for instance. The story is predictable and the film weak on action. You will need extra chili salt on your popcorn to stay awake. Growing up on the wrong side of the tracks has its drawbacks, and in the film Slate, those drawbacks can be lethal. It concerns a young man, well played by Jacob Latimore, who survives by doing magic tricks on the street. But he oversteps the limits and interferes on a drug lord's territory who threatens his family. It's a rough film with some violence, although not as explicit as in the usual drug movies. There is more attention to characterization, while the bond of family is carefully examined. But the boy's magic tricks also come at a deadly price. Slate is heavier than you think. It is more accessible than the usual drug-infested drama, with a lot more humanity thrown in. If you want to show your kid above 16 the dangers of drug and surviving in an unlawful way, then Slate is for you. Next week, Dark Tower, based on the Stephen King novellas, The Exception, a World War II drama, as well as The Glass Castle, about an eccentric family, and American Assassin, a story about counter-terrorism. Until then, see you at the movies.
All right, a very interesting slot that we've just introduced on Friday mornings right here on Newsroom. We should be looking forward to that over the next couple of Fridays. In fact, it looks like it's going to be something that's going to be part of what we do every Friday. Now, we're not going to bring you sports on this Friday morning right now. What we are going to be bringing you is a press briefing that Harmony Gold is holding right now with regards to that tragedy that has struck at the Kusasa mine. Let's go there now, live.
One death or a fatality or the loss of life of any employee is one loss of life too many. Now, if we keep saying that, and there isn't a meaningful, fundamental change in the injuries that take place on the mining industry, a lot of our statements lose that authenticity. And I was saying in the earlier meeting, that it is difficult to look at these families in the eye. It's one of the most painful and one of the most emotionally devastating experience. To have to look at a family in their eyes and say that, yes, there was a seismic event, and yes, you know, we are not just complying with the law, because we all support the investigation, totally. But the bottom line is, these people, these workers, lost their lives on our mine, on our premises, where we have to take the responsibility, irrespective of what comes out of the investigation. The families have entrusted the workers to us, and we are accountable to them. So the minister and I, as I said, went to visit the families, and it's a very painful, extremely painful and sad experience for them. But of course, this industry was built by poor workers, in fact, workers who build the South African industry as well as the whole of the economy. So we have a duty to provide jobs, but we have an even greater duty to make sure that the obligation of creating a safe and healthy environment never, never, never stops. So what I want to say in conclusion is that we have been so grateful by the cooperation as well as the support of the minister, the ministry, the leadership of the workers, and also thank the proto teams. You know, if you want to see black and white in South Africa, working hard together in a united effort, as has happened when our own proto teams were trying to save the lives as best they could, and as well bring out those families when they did. I mean, those workers that we lost. So we just want to say in conclusion that we will do everything possible to work together with the investigation, and we have a never-ending obligation to never stop trying to create the safest and the most healthy environment. Workers should not come to the mines to lose their lives. It's unacceptable. Totally, totally unacceptable. And as I said, we have to take that. We are responsible in the sense that they come to us and we are accountable. And of course, whatever will come out of that hearing will never change the responsibility we have. It's not the responsibility of the workers. It's our responsibility in the first place. And we are committed to keep making a humble contribution. I think there'll be other announcements concerning the memorial, but there was a good point that was raised by the leadership of the workers to say that, you know, we should not just, as is the culture, provide a job to a family because a worker has lost his life. We should do much, much more. And the suggestion from the leadership AMCU and the workers to say that, as well as NUM, to say that we should educate the youngest at the time up to tertiary level is something that, Peter, we have to look at very, very seriously and try and help as best we can. I just want to conclude by saying thank you so much, Minister, and thank you for the support, the condolences, but also for the message you gave. And there will always be challenges, but we must emphatically recommit ourselves to making sure that our people do not lose their lives at the mines. It's totally unacceptable. Thank you, Minister.
Well, let me start first by thanking everybody who has spent the past 7 days here in this mine. We also ourselves have been here, and it is actually unparalleled to see unions, management, the proto team working together the way they did without really blaming each other. We want to thank everybody, including the chair, Mr. Mtsipe. You're actually the first one to take responsibility since I became the minister and be here yourself. Go visit the families, look them in the eyes, and console them. I hope other mine bosses will see this as very important. This must be a turning point when it comes to issues of safety. This year alone, I think I've visited more than 45 families, because every incident I do go and look the family in the eyes. So the issue of the safety should be reaching a turning point as we speak today. Earlier on, we have agreed with the workers here that we will go back and consult everybody, but we will begin to be tough in terms of exercising our powers and regulating this issue. We cannot talk forever. I think action must follow, and as we act, we believe South Africans will support us, because these workers comes here with a view of supporting their families and going back to their families alive, not going back when they are dead. And if they do go back dead, it must not be a normal thing. We as government, the unions, the mines themselves, bosses, must actually take example from what the chair said. We are going to have a report. I have said to my inspectors, leave no stone unturned, because we want to go to the bottom of all these incidents that has happened, and we'll make that public. We are grateful that the chairman here and everybody is working together with us to ensure that this industry is one of the safest. I believe we can do that. If we become serious, we all do what we are supposed to do, whether be workers, management, the DMR, we should just carry what we need to do and ensure that our workers are safe. Until we create bosses coming from workers in the mining industry, we'll have not fulfilled our duty as government. He's saying what he's saying because he has graduated through this industry. He understands the pain of a family losing a breadwinner. We need to create more of those so that we fight this. But we want to thank you, Chant, AMCU, NUM, and everybody, the department, for ensuring that all the deceased are recovered. We have just said we will come when everybody has been recovered, but the team has been here 24/7. So we've been getting reports. We didn't just want to come during the first day because the media would have then came here and defocused us from doing the real job of recovering the bodies that needed to be recovered. And now that that has happened, we will go back and do our work. We are prepared to work with you, the unions and everybody, to make the industry the safest, to ensure that the smallest child at home is not only assisted by the mine, but happens to interact with their father. Because nobody can replace, no amount of money or warmth can replace a human being, can replace a father, can replace a mother. I think that we must get clear. If somebody is going to replace the brother here, it does not mean that scar is closed. That scar will live forever with the family, with the children. They will forever say, my father died at the mine. And as leaders seated here, it is our duty to stand up and say to all our mines and the bosses, this far no further. That's what we want to say. And thank you.
Thank you, Minister. I think before we open the floor for questions, let's just welcome and introduce to you Mr. Dumisa Mahlalela. Welcome, Governor. Okay. I think what we are going to do in the interest of time is to open the floor for questions. Just perhaps as
maybe allow the comrades to say something. Yeah.
Should we move it?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you and good morning. Firstly, our heartfelt condolences to the families who have lost their loved ones in this incident. We're saying balaleng wenxeba awehlanga ngehlanga. Thank you to the proto teams for the effort and the unparalleled effort that they put into this operation. Thank you to the colleagues of the deceased workers who also worked tirelessly assisting the proto teams. We'd also like to thank management and all the other colleagues from various unions that were here giving their support in every way that they could. The killings in the mining industry have come to a tipping point. Not so long ago, we were up the road at Taulegwa, where a similar seismic incident took place, and we lost 3 colleagues. hardly a month later, we've lost 5 colleagues at Kusasaletu. It would be a sad day if the next time we invite the members of this media, more colleagues have been killed in the neighboring mine. This should be the last of it. We want to put a challenge to DMR that the inquiries into these accidents need to be expedited. The current reality is it takes 2 years, up to 3 years before the inquiry even sits, let alone the findings of the inquiry. By the time the inquiry sits, some of the witnesses can scarcely even remember what had transpired. Some of the witnesses have left employment and cannot be found, and this does not assist the process. We want DMR to expedite this process. We are not saying that this incident should be given more priority than others, but if you look at the number of people that have lost their lives just in the past month through these incidents in the mine, it really raises an eyebrow, and it makes sense why the inquiries need to be expedited. But also on top of that, we need to see the results, the findings of these inquiries. We need to see people being held accountable for the deaths in the mining industry. More often than not, it is the workers, it is the shift bosses, it is the miners that get used as scapegoats after these incidences. We hardly ever see senior executives being held to account. We want to see this happening. If this is not done, then these inquiries serve no purpose at all, and these killings will continue to take place. I also want to reiterate what I've said to the minister and the captains of this company, that the replacement of a deceased worker by a next of kin does nothing but to create an impression that people are a commodity that can be replaced, that can be dispensed with. That should not be the attitude. These are human beings, these are mothers, these are fathers, these are sons and daughters. We cannot be burying them every single day, especially for accidents that could have been prevented. So we would like to see action being taken sooner than later. I thank you.
Okay, do you want to come this side since the musical chairs is switch?
Or we can just move it there. We can just move it there.
No. Chairperson, thank you very much for this opportunity to say something on behalf of NUM. I think our colleague have said a mouthful of words here. But the first thing from NUM is to send condolences to the bereaved families. You know, we have been here since the incident happened last Friday. It was tiring, but we also must appreciate the cooperation between ourselves, management, the stakeholders, workers, the inspectors. We very much, we really appreciate the contribution that they've given. Because at times we had to come with suggestions from NUM to say, what if we take this direction? They were also taking every advice from ourselves into consideration. And we also want to thank our colleagues, all unions, irrespective of which union. We had a good cooperation because we always believe that even if we have got differences, but when we have got incidents of this nature, we must normally put it aside and concentrate what have happened to all of us. And we also appreciate the fact that at this stage, nobody have stood up to say we are playing who, we are playing which we believe it is not the right time. There will be time where investigations will be done. And even then, we believe going forward, it will be a question of saying, we understand this have happened. It will be a question of saying, we understand this have happened. How then do we move forward? Because primarily our focus was to have these colleagues accounted for. And we want to say thank you very much to the proto team, because they also take our advice as well, of which we really appreciate. And we believe that what we have done at Kusasa must not end here. Whenever there is an incident of this nature, cooperation is very much important, because blaming each other is, in actual fact, is not going to assist the industry, it is not going to assist us. But when there are issues, irrespective of how tense they are, it is very much important that we sit around the table and discuss and find solutions than going outside shouting to each other. You know, I don't think it will be the best interest of us as organized labor and the people we represent. But we also appreciate the chairman for coming, and the minister, thank you very much. And the CEO and his team, thank you very much. And we really had a good cooperation until yesterday when these colleagues were encountered for. In terms of going forward, as we have indicated from NUM, we are not going to preempt whatsoever have happened until the investigation is done. And once the investigation is done, everything is brought to the table. We'll be able to sit down and mention where did we go wrong, because it's important. You know, we must also indicate that it took us by surprise, because if you look at Harmony, we were at a stage where we were saying, in terms of safety, we are doing right. It just happened. You look at the record itself. We thought we are doing everything right, but unfortunately this incident came. But what is it that it's saying to us? It said, let us go back. Because it's just like a team. When it is winning, sometimes you become complacent and say, no, things are rosy. But when a team loses, it is then when you could say, let us do something. I think this is what all of us must do, not blaming. It is our industry. We will always have this. But it is also important that when there is something that we must discuss it as a team and ensure that it does not happen. With those words, thank you very much, Chairperson.
Let's just start off by taking a set of 3 questions. I always say no long preambles that end up confusing the respondents or the people that you're talking to. Just as they say in Afrikaans, kort en bondig, so they say straight to the point and just indicate who the question is directed at and just fire the question in bundles of 3, if you may. Also introduce yourself, please. There's the first hand there. Another hand. Okay, but it's okay.
Hi, I'm Nisha from News 24. This is directed at Mr. Azwane. You said that you believe that this industry can become one of the safest, and that you're looking to implement tougher exercising of power and regulating the safety issues. Do you have particular plans that you plan to implement and in order to ensure that this carries through?
Let's take you.
My name is Kel Mono. I work with ANN7. My question is directed to Minister as well. Minister, you said this incident should be a turning point and that you are going to be tough after this. As Mr. Samile from AMCU suggested that senior executives should be held responsible for this incident. Can you give us a surety that executives will be held responsible with whatever investigations will come out after the chief inspectors, whatever the report they will give you? And also, when will Minister as well as other officials stop saying that this should be a turning point? Because we've seen, the other day also I asked this question to one of the officials, because every time an incident like this takes place, we see ministers and officials coming and saying this should be a turning point. It's not the first, and surely it will not be the last.
Another taker before we allow Minister to respond? I think let's respond to Minister.
Well, we must acknowledge the fact that we are hands-on. Since we came here, every incident we come, we want to know what has happened. And we make follow-ups, which is what has not been happening in the past. We all have adopted a zero-harm strategy, including the industry. At some point, there was a cry even from you, members of the media, as we were implementing Section 54. You came crying and saying, hey, economy is going down. It means if we all have to reach this turning point, we must work together, all of us. Media, companies, unions, DMR, we must all work together to turn this tide. The chairperson of this mine is here with us, and he has said himself that they are willing to cooperate with whatever the report will be saying. And we must acknowledge that that is also unparalleled. We do not wish to sketch a scenario of knowing who are the culprits. But we can tell you that whatever outcome of the report will be followed without any fear. Anyway, we have never shown fear as DMR dealing with issues. So we'll continue dealing with these issues. So every time when there's a deceased, we repeat the message, because we can't stop repeating the message. And we go back and check what has happened, and we act. I'm sure as we talk, that section is closed. It's an action that we have all agreed that this is not safe, let's close. And I have also spoken with my inspectors that I need more reports. If there were reports previously in that section, we must see what has the management done to remedy that situation. And we'll take it from there. So what I can tell you, and you'll agree with us, once the DMR says this is going to happen, it's going to happen. We have laws and regulations. We will go back and consult so that tomorrow you don't say we have not consulted with stakeholders. The first stakeholder is here, is agreeing with us. The second one is here, AMCO, is agreeing with us. And the third stakeholder is there, is also agreeing with us. We'll rope others because we don't have the wisdom, the monopoly of wisdom as the department alone. But what we are sure of is the stance that we all agree on, that this should be a turning point. 5 people dead all at the same time. I'm not saying one is not important. We'll go back and bring heads together. If you wish, we'll also invite you for your own contribution. I think I've answered what you have asked me.
Sisi, I'm noting you. Any other hand? Sisi, I'm noting you. Maqale lapha ekhoneni singa-jump you. Okay, masiya sizobuya ngapha.
Alright, here Khomisa Mutuse from Eyewitness News. I just wanted to ask, based on the two ladies' questions, because I'm not answered, just in terms of what are you going to do differently? Maybe that's what I wanted, my colleagues wanted to know. And we appreciate your answer, which is very generic, but maybe you can help us with a detailed explanation of what will be done differently this time.
We will come back and implement Section 54 and all other sections that are there, that you in the previous occurrences you complained about. We'll implement them. You must just come, join us, support us. Because you have a tendency when we do things, you forget that you had asked us these questions. What are we going to do? We will implement the laws that we have without moving. We'll also talk, engage, because that is very important. And hear from the workers themselves, because they are the ones that are there. Under the ground, and the management and the bosses. We will have a campaign that we will launch after engaging everybody. Safety campaign, masipepe, because we want to make this industry the safest. There will be challenges, but that is our target. I hope I was direct.
Just with your permission, I just want, because this is a very important question, in terms of, and from a mining management perspective, what should we do differently? Now, I want to tell you something important. When we had because this is seismic, and seismic means it's an earth tremor, and we have had to ask ourselves, as I said, we own 15% of Harmony through African Rainbow Minerals. And we had to ask ourselves, do we close these mines? Because it is unacceptable. Or do we walk out of the industry? This mine has got 5 years left. And the people who lost their lives did so more than 3 kilometers below the surface. This is deep level mining. And the issue arose, but if you guys leave, it would be a betrayal of the obligations we have to provide jobs in this industry. But jobs in this industry that leads to loss of life is no jobs at all. The laws as they stand were there to make sure that, and they're amongst, we compare legislation, Minister and Inspector of Mines. We do mining in various other parts of the world. In terms of ensuring that the safety and health environment, this is as good as you get in the world, and in some regards even much, much better than many of the developing countries. But we also have to be honest. Deep level mining, the challenge that as a South African mining industry at some stage we're going to have to confront ourselves with is what does the future of deep level mining look like? And I can say to you, we will close those mines. It doesn't matter how much resources we've put in. If it is unsafe and we feel that the health of our workers the safety and health of our workers are at stake, we will close them. But as I say as well, we need to engage with the stakeholders, because I just want to say one final thing. A few years ago, when we were closing one mine, and we had a discussion with various stakeholders, And one of the leaders of the workers stood up and said, you know, Comrade Patrice, you have to live in the real world. So I said, what do you mean? He says, you know, there are many industries. If you drive on the road, you can get injured. Many jobs are by nature, despite best practices, there are injuries. So in your obligation and your duty to say that the mines, and also complying with the law, to say that the mines which are not safe must be closed, take into account that that's a betrayal. It's a betrayal of me, the workers who have worked for this company, and also a broader betrayal of the industry. So the right thing going forward is we have to continue to engage. And we've got to keep on committing ourselves to best practices. Minister, we've had so many of our mines closed. And sometimes closed for an absolutely minor transgression, to bring the mine to a standstill. And management, when they come and explain, I mean, we've got a mine that employs 5,000 people, a platinum mine, which is not as, the risks are not the same because this is deep level mining. And the department issued Section 55s, several. And the people on the mine were even scared to come and report. Because our starting point is, why do they issue the Section 55? You are to blame. We are to blame. So it is, and it's unacceptable. So I'm just saying that, you know, you asked a very important question, my good friend here. And again, we don't want to meet here next time and say, this is another turning point. I mean, the pain and the commitment is what should take us forward and try and make this industry as safe, as the minister has said, as safe as we can. It's for our children and for all stakeholders.
This is Silwana Khalani from PL. I just wanted clarity, Minister, in terms of the time frames concerning the report.
Well, it always depends on the difficulty we come across. For an example, this is not going to be one of the easy ones. 3 kilometers, seismic, where did it start, what is the cause, and all those issues. What we have been doing is to say to the management, report us in terms of how far you have moved, and so that we have a sense. As soon as they are done, we will be able to share with you. For an example, we have been pushing them to finish the Lily Mine investigation, and it took more than a year because you need also to put legal minds together, because once the report is there, it must be implemented. So we want a credible report, and it's not entirely in our hands.
Thanks, Minister.
I just wanted to ask, you particularly spoke around how you need to be more stringent in terms of the law and ensuring that everyone abides. Do you think people have been getting away, or mine bosses have been getting away with not complying? And if so, why have we waited so long to do this? Because these are people's lives.
Well, Khomotso, the chair has just said we have closed a number of his mines, and he's right. So it means we have not waited. I was just saying at a particular point, as we're escalating, even the media started saying, we think DMR is not doing the right job. Because we normally alert the management in terms of what is discovered in the mines that should be fixed before we go to Section 54. And if you go to any mine, they will tell you that we have been there.
That's Mining Minister Mosebenze Zwane speaking after the accident at Harmony Gold's Kusasalethu mine. That's on Gauteng's West Rand. And you can imagine the horror underground seismic event occurring last Friday. And we've been following the rescue efforts. Unfortunately, 5 miners were trapped after a rock fall, and none of them were brought up alive. Eventually, 5 bodies were discovered. And really soul searching on behalf of the mining industry, Patrice Matsepe, saying that they need to take responsibility. He from African Rainbow Minerals that has a 15% stake in Harmony, and just talking about the options. Do you close the mines? Do you walk away when jobs are also needed, but saying that the jobs mean nothing if people lose their lives? The unions there as well demanding accountability, saying that they will follow what is done because mine workers cannot be treated like commodities. Their lives are very important. And of course, Zwane himself saying that the media complains and mines complain about Section 54, which I think relates to safety stoppages. So whenever there's a safety concern, we see mines being closed, sometimes for days. They've complained that that really hampers their economic activity, their ability to make profits. So really mine surfing, soul searching rather, what has to be done in the wake of this horrific accident. Now we have breaking news today. Kenya's Supreme Court says that the presidential election was not conducted in accordance with the Constitution. That renders the result invalid, null and void. And President Uhuru Kenyatta was not elected properly. There will have to be a new election within 60